join in a while. Sanjukta ma'am, you can hear us?
Hello, good evening. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We're just waiting for you to start in a while. Sanjukta ma'am, you can hear us?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine.
Take care. Over to you.
Namaste and greetings. Idea Rawat, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the 8th day of Diplomacy, Foreign Policy and Geopolitics Youth Fellowship, an online international winter and spring school program. A 3-month immersive online introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program. This training program is organized by IMPRI, Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies. This fellowship program is chaired by Professor Swarna Singh Ji, Professor and Chairperson, Center for International Politics, Organization and Disarmament, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. The co-chairs of the programs are Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, retired professor of International Relations, Jadavpur University, Kolkata, and visiting professor at IMPRI, and Dr. Simbi Mehta, CEO and editorial director at IMPRI. The panel of convener comprises of Dr. Simbi Mehta ji and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. Today is a special day in the fellowship as we shift the focus to you, our participants. This session is dedicated to the presentation of your project ideas, and we are truly excited to hear your perspectives. I welcome all the participants to this enlightening deliberation. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind perusal. Now, without any further ado, let us start our program. I would now like to invite our co-chair, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji, to share a few opening remarks to set the tone for today's participants' presentations. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here. We have had a number of lectures, and in fact, I've gone through the suggestions, the papers, the course out, I mean, the paper outlines of the participants quite thoroughly, and I made my comments. And today I'm really looking forward to, in fact, hearing from you how you are going about it. I think Ria is going to tell us how long each person is going to take. What, 10 minutes, 5 minutes? So she will tell basically how long each participant will be given. Please keep to the time because there are a number of you and we have 2 hours to complete it. Now, this, of course, is very, it's going to be an interesting session. We're looking forward to this. And in fact, there will be a wide number, from what I've seen, a wide number of subjects which will be discussed here. So that should be interesting. You know, basically stretching from well all aspects of diplomacy and foreign policy, right, even to feminist foreign policy. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. I'm not going to take up any more time. Uh, yeah, we can start off.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'd also like to invite Dr. Simi Mehta ji to share her opening remarks for today's session. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. So, welcome to the presentation session. So, we will I hope the entire fellowship series is going on well, and I've been able to go through the various kinds of documents that have been shared. So, given the uncertainties, the geopolitical uncertainties, I think this fellowship becomes all the more relevant, and we need to be more updated and what's going on. And I urge all of you to keep your questions intact, and even send us your doubts and concerns and all the queries that is coming up, that may be coming up on your minds, so that it will lead to a larger and healthy discussion. So with this, I'd like to hand it over, and we'd like to discuss it further. Back to you, Ria.
So thank you, ma'am. And thank you so much for those insightful remarks. Now, moving on to today's structure. Each participant will be called one by one to present their topic. You will have a strict time limit of 5 minutes for your presentation. At the 4 minute mark, we will gently remind you to start wrapping up. Please ensure your presentation is clear, focused, and within time. And you can use the join as panelist request to start using the mic and camera feature. We look forward to hearing from each of you. We will first start with Vikramaditya ji. So you can start presenting your presentation.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So let me just share the screen.
I'll be happy if you can also show yourself.
Oh, yeah, sure. Good evening, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, is it visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible, but it's on in working mode.
Oh, on. So, yeah. Can I start now?
It's still in working mode,
Yes,
but
please go.
please go ahead.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Vikramaditya Srivastav, and I'm a final year student of Masters in International Relations, Security, and Strategy at Open Global University. So today, I'll be presenting my research titled Bridging the Cybersecurity Knowledge Gap, a Policy Perspective. This presentation reflects my deep interest in the security domain, particularly the impact of emerging technologies such as cybersecurity on the whole society. So before we begin, I would like to mention that my slides are deliberately simple with no images or multimedia component. This is an intentional choice to ensure the focus remains on the policies and insights I will discuss rather than on the visual distractions. So the first thing is context. So let me begin by explaining why I chose this topic. As someone deeply interested in security studies, I'm fascinated by how emerging technologies reshape our lives. Cybersecurity stands out as a critical area that demands attention, given its far-reaching impact on individuals and organizations. I believe vulnerable groups such as children and retirees face distinct cyber risks. For children, these risks include social media misuse, cyberbullying, and grooming. And for retirees, they are frequently targeted by financial scams, putting their life savings at risk. So cyber literacy is a crucial life skill for everyone, and my presentation focuses on policy measures to address these challenges. Through my research, I identified children and retirees as key focus areas due to their unique vulnerabilities. For children, the pervasive influence of social media and risks like cyberbullying necessitate targeted interventions. Retirees, meanwhile, face growing threats like phishing and fraud, making cyber literacy critical. So the proposed solutions, according to me, would include number one, gamified learning tools for more engaging education. Number two, public-private partnerships to combine expertise for impactful awareness programs. And number three, flexible frameworks tailored to cultural and socioeconomic diversity. So policy recommendations. To address these challenges, I propose the following policy recommendations. Number one, integrating cybersecurity education into school curricula to introduce safe practices early. And this is targeted towards primary school children. Then implementing scenario-based hands-on learning methods tailored for vulnerable groups, allocating sustained funding to develop and scale inclusive cyber literacy programs. And last, periodic evaluations to refine policies and address evolving cyber threats. These measures aim to close the cybersecurity knowledge gap effectively. And in the conclusion, I'd like to say that cybersecurity, I believe, is not just a technical concern. It is a universal skill essential for navigating the digital world safely. So empowering vulnerable groups like children and retirees through policy-driven interventions fosters a culture of digital resilience. And collaboration between governments, institutions, and private organizations is critical for developing scalable and inclusive solutions. And I believe addressing this issue today ensures a safer, more equitable, and digital future for generations to come. Yes, and this I have concluded now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vikramaditya, thank you for the presentation. Just wanted to basically add a comment, and that is, what is your methodology? How are you going to go about basically measuring the impact of cyber security on children and retirees?
I think I'm going to focus more on the on India, because every day I keep hearing news about cyber security, cyber crimes and scams targeting innocent people. So my research methodology will be mainly focused towards qualitative. It will be biased in favor of qualitative methodologies.
Okay. Now, in any paper, you have to basically you also have to talk about, because you're talking about children and retirees as this thing. Well, you have to take a number of people, a bit of quantitative, to identify exactly what you were trying to say, and then go about it. Okay. Simi, if you have anything to add to this.
No, ma'am, we'll move on to the next if you have done with your remarks. Sanjukta, ma'am?
Yeah.
We'll move to the next candidate if you're not done with your remarks, ma'am. Shall we move on, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Yes, certainly.
So next we'll have Shovik Banerjee ji's presentation.
Yeah.
Sir, please go ahead and present.
Thank you for that. Good evening, madam. Good evening to everyone on the panel and on the call. I'll share my screen. Let me know once it's visible to everyone. Yeah. So my topic for today is supply chain diplomacy, evaluating the impact of certain structural changes in supply chain realignments and how that is creating a regional order of balance with an emphasis on Vietnam and Malaysia. So I have used kind of a graphical narrative, just given the time constraints. I thought that might be the best way to do it. So I'll just try to narrate a story here. We date back to COVID-19, 2021, when the world was in shatters. Economy-wise, social-wise, I think we were not in the best of shapes. And so were supply chains. We had shocks both on the supply side and demand side for reasons that are obvious to us. So we had shortage of supplies and we didn't have enough demands. So overall, economy was going through a very bad phase. As a result of that event, the Black Swan event that came across, one very interesting concept that started taking shape in that period was realignment of supply chain paradigms. So that's the period when we saw concepts like nearshoring, reshoring, friendshoring, China N+1 start taking shape. And the world was gradually moving towards a displacement of manufacturing lines across the world. Now, whenever there is a paradigm shift or whenever there is a structural change in the way the world operates, there are always going to be certain beneficiaries. In this case, Southeast Asia, portions of Latin America, of course, emerged as big beneficiaries of these supply chains moving out of China. And more specifically here, Vietnam and Malaysia emerged as two countries in Southeast Asia, which due to a host of factors, including their strategic locations in the Indo-Pacific and their geographical closeness to China, gave them that upper hand of grabbing a lot of investments that were obviously, that were of course moving out of the mainland China. And they witnessed high growths in the last 3.5, 4 years. We have seen high amounts of FDIs flowing in. Labor productivity has shot up. GDP growth rates have consistently been in the range of 8 to 10% for the last 3 years. So the period has been a period of high economic rise for both these nations. And they had their own reasons also. They wanted to re-emphasize their own positioning in the Indo-Pacific. Given China's increasing influence in the South China and the Pacific Ocean, they wanted to ensure that both individually and as major nations of the Asian bloc, they are able to keep a multipolar order intact in the Indo-Pacific. Having said that, a couple of case studies here, which kind of form the bedrock of my analysis, is that what have been those geopolitical events and what have they done to the overall stature of Vietnam and Malaysia to help them, become regions of or countries of enhanced importance. So one is one case here that we can look at is the Vietnam Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. It was a major flashpoint in their relationship with US, signing that in 2023. It just opened doors to increased collaboration for Vietnam, both in areas of tech and defense. And similar agreements were then signed up with countries like Quad, of the Quad, like India, Japan, Australia. So it just opened up a lot more opportunities for them with members of the West-led alliance. The Asian Future Forum, which happened this year, 2025, we saw Vietnam position themselves in a leadership position. That also enhanced their stature in the region. And more importantly, also a pivotal position with regard to their positioning in the ASEAN. Similarly, Malaysia signed a pact with India recently in 2024. So that again is an example of how diverse these geopolitical leverages have been for both Vietnam and Malaysia. So what have these things done for them? One, of course, apart from the individual enhancements that we just spoke of, ASEAN, as a result of this increased geopolitical importance that these two nations have got, ASEAN has been able to create greater centrality for their voice in the Indo-Pacific. Because when the Indo-Pacific concept was being framed, ASEAN as a bloc had their apprehensions around the role that they would be playing. So it kind of, with this realignment happening, it just put a lot of attention back into ASEAN and Southeast Asia, both economically and politically.
And you have 1 minute left.
Okay. And of course, strategic hedging that we discussed in the last slide. Recommendations for a future course that would help them stay the course. Skill labor development will have to be focused on. Infrastructure upgrade, both port and digital, would be important. How they incorporate the sustainability angle into this entire development story will be key. Regulatory reforms would be necessary, providing a conducive environment from a policy standpoint. And how they get the entire region together, not just standalone development. How do they engage ASEAN, Quad, and some of the other SCO and some of the other regional blocs in their development story? And lastly, this is a question which, of course, is not part of my research, but an interesting development that happened in the last 1 week is how we are now beginning to see a new regional order, perhaps, with the visit of Xi Jinping to both Malaysia and Vietnam. So there are interesting developments coming up, and we might be seeing a new regional order coming into play in the next few years. But of course, focus of my research is going to be what has happened in the last 3.5 years more specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Shavik.
Thank you, Shobik. That was that is interesting, actually, what you're doing. But you are going to focus only on 2 countries, right?
That's
or
right.
the whole of
That's
ASEAN?
right. No, madam. It's going to be Vietnam and Malaysia. That's about it.
Vietnam and Malaysia. Now, what you have to state why you're taking these 2 countries. Okay.
Okay.
It's a short paper. I mean, explain exactly why Vietnam and Malaysia. All right, because supply chain diplomacy is something that affects all of us over here.
Okay.
And maybe you can put in basically because we are getting very worried about supply chain diplomacy in the current context with President Trump and his policies on tariff and making America so-called great again, right, by taking jobs away. So Vietnam and Malaysia also produce a lot of things which are sold. Now, how that is going to basically also affect, all right, the supply chain economics or diplomacy of these two countries, okay? Uh, Otherwise, I think it's a very good concept, and please go ahead. Right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the third presentation by Pratishtha Singh ji. And please go ahead and start your presentation.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, your screen is visible, ma'am.
So I will be covering the topic, which is United Nations Sustainable Development Objectives and Indian foreign policies. And my research
Okay.
focus,
Yeah. Now you're audible, yes.
yes. So good evening, panelists. My name is Pratisha, and my research focuses on how India's foreign policies is evolving to align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in an increasingly multipolar world. And why did I choose this topic? Since as India rises on the global stage, its diplomacy is no longer just about the strategic alliances, but it has become a tool to promote a sustainable development. And from initiatives like the International Solar Alliances to Mission Life, India is positioning itself as a responsible power that blends geopolitics with climate equity and development priorities. And hence, that those are the reasons that I chose this topic. The research question which I will be working upon is that how is India integrating those SDGs goal into its foreign policies? What role does India play in strengthening global sustainability institutions? And
I can't hear you.
Yes, ma'am, there's a connectivity issue by from Pratishtha ji's side.
Ria, we can proceed with the next one in the meanwhile.
Sure, ma'am. We'll now move to Khushi Sonal ji. And you can start your presentation.
Hello. Let me just start. Yeah, is the screen visible?
Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
Yeah, so my topic is on UN Women. Myself, Khushi Sonar, and this topic I chose because I'm a law student and a feminist, so I thought it would be good for me to do it. So, introduction is gender equality is essential for human rights and sustainable development. Women continue to face systemic inequality globally. Established in 2010 by the United Nations General Assembly, UN Women, officially known as the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and Empowerment. Origins and history of UN Women. Formed by merging 41 UN entities, which is DAW, which is Division for Advancement of Women, INSTRAW, which is International Research and Training Institute of Advancement of Women, OSAGI, Office of the Special Affairs on Gender Issues and Advancement of Women, UNIFEM, United Nations Development Fund for Women. They were merged in 2010, forming UN Women as they individually had low fundings and overlapping role. structure and mission. In my research paper, I'm going to work on the structure and mission of UN Women in detail. But for now, UN Women has 41 members in total. It has its headquarters in New York City and has strong field presence in 90 countries. Its mission is to support CSW, which is Commission of Status of Women, technical assistance for women widely, fight gender inequality, ensure peaceful and safe world. Key focuses are ending violence against women and girls, economic empowerment, leadership and political participation, women in peace and security, digital inclusion of climate resilience. Global initiative, He for She campaign, Generational Equality Forum, Safe Cities initiatives. I'm going to talk about these things in detail in my research paper. Achievements and impact. Increased female participation in politics, law reformed in multiple countries for women protection, millions reached to empowerment and education programs. Future vision, which is from 2022 to 2025. Alignment of SDGs, gender equality, address climate change through gender lens, expand access to digital tools and education, mobilize youth, private sector, and civil society. The conclusion is that UN Women plays a vital role in global equality. True change requires collective actions from all the sectors, and gender equality is one of the very important sectors. UN Women does not only work for women, but does work for men too. Its main motive is for equal rights for both men and women, and not only women. Thank you. And I'd end my presentation with when women lead, the world progresses. Thank you.
Khushi, thank you. Good, but the problem with I have an issue basically with this because it's more like a narrative. All right, it's an essay.
Yes.
So, what are your research questions? I mean, are you looking also at? You should be, in fact, looking at. Well, it was created for a purpose. Has it achieved that purpose? You know, so that should be part of your. I mean, in the when you write a research paper, you have a methodology, you have some research questions, and you basically have on the basis of the research questions, you have also a conclusion, right? So you have to bring in some research questions. Otherwise, it's just a narrative essay, right? Narrative essay is it's like a book chapter. I mean, for students to read up, but a research paper is something different, right? If you understand. Otherwise, I think it's very good. What you've done, structure, etc., is all right, except that there should be some research question. There should be a motive as to why you are writing this paper. And of course, the basic thing is it was created for a purpose. Has it achieved that purpose? Okay. So, okay.
Ma'am, may I add to it that actually during my presentation, I did mention what I'm gonna take in my research. So those are the questions itself, that what UN Women is working for. Especially I want to work for the Syria and Africa side for now. And also UN Women is in Asia. So yeah, the initiatives which is I want to highlight.
Yeah, but you have to reshape it in such a way so that it sounds like a research question. Has it been effective in Asia and Africa? Has it been effective anywhere else? Has it been effective in climate change? I mean, the various objectives which were there, has it been effective so far? Because it was created in 2010, it's 15 years back, all right? So in the 15 years, has it been able to achieve even a fraction of what it basically was, what was directed against? Okay.
Okay.
And if it has not, why? If it has, all right, good, that way. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Keep that in mind when you're doing it. Just restructure it. Otherwise, it's fine. Just you have to reword it a bit so that it's kind of a research paper rather than a narrative paper. Got it? Okay. Thank you, Khushi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kushiji. Pratishtha-ji, if you have rejoined, you can resume your presentation.
Yes. Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am.
So, sorry for the disruption. So my research questions were how India will be integrating the SDGs goal into its foreign policies. Secondly, what role does India plays in strengthening global sustainability institutions? And thirdly, what policy strategies can make this alignment more effective? So these were the three questions that I will be covering for this topic. And the methodology which I will be using will be the qualitative research design. Through this, I will be using multiple government reports and documents to refer that what are the policies have been taking place and what are the steps. 30, the case studies initiative and will be taken. Fourthly, I will be following the interviews of the various diplomats and through the external ministry portal, I will be referring to them as a reference. And lastly, I will be using the other foreign policies model to get to know that what are they doing as per to implement the SDGs into their curriculum. Yes, that's from my part.
Yes, Pratishtha. A good paper, but obviously you have not really worked on it. I mean, in the sense that you haven't started really working on it because your questions are absolutely fine, and so is well, basically your methodology, except that uh, a methodology that you have outlined. How long do you have to write this paper?
Sorry, ma'am.
How long do you have to write this paper? How
Uh,
much time have you been given?
Ma'am, I think by end of this month.
End of this month. So, can you do all that you have mentioned over here? You know, maybe expert interviews and things like that. Select expert interviews, one or two. You can basically put in, and so far as comparative, with other emerging, maybe select countries, one or two. All right, because there are many developing countries and all that. So maybe one other or something which is doing very well, or with China, for that matter. I mean. Something like that, whether it is following up. Because SDG goals, I think most of the world is way behind. All right. I mean, it's not going to be completed by 2030 or anything like that. So you also need to give the figures, okay, for India. Okay. And that's the only way you will compare with other countries. All right. So take a look into that. In your methodology, basically bring in also the figures as to what we have done. And these, we have annual reports which is supposed to be placed with the government, right? So take a look at that. Okay. Otherwise, it's good. The plan is good. Start working on it and find that you're overwhelmed with data. There is so much data. What you're going to choose from, that will depend. Okay. Thank you, Pratishtha.
Thank you, Pratishtha ji. We will now proceed with the next presentation by Tanisha Upadhyay ji.
Hello, I'm audible?
Yes,
Just
you
give
are.
me, I will share the screen. Is my screen visible?
No, your screen is not visible, ma'am.
Just give me. I don't know why it's not starting. Okay.
You can share your presentation with us, ma'am. Meanwhile, we move on to the next candidate.
Okay, sure. Let me.
Sure. We'll move to our next presentation by Shri Gupta ji. Sir, you can start your presentation.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, ma'am.
Okay. Is my screen visible? Is my screen visible?
No, it's showing it has started sharing. Yes, it's visible now.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Shri, and I'm working on Trump 2.0 and its impact on the Russia-China, North Korea triangle. So, to basically understand where this is coming from, the first understanding of the basically where I got this idea was from when I was reading the newspaper last year, and I started noticing that the North Korean forces were in Kursk, which was kind of something that took me aback, because this was the first time I had seen North Korea come into the foreplay of Russia and Ukraine. Cut to a few months, and then we had Trump coming in, and whatever little knowledge I had gathered about North Korea and its relationship with China and Russia, Mr. Donald Trump's entry seemed to be a wild card to it, and I wasn't exactly able to understand how is this going to potentially change the trajectory now, considering that these countries had become quite close and had been having a lot of ministerial level meetings, a lot of trade deals, and even the North Korean presence in Kursk. And that is when I joined the fellowship, I thought that this is something basically I want to work on. So the objective of this study is simple. I would be doing a comparative study of US policy through three administrations. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, and the second administration, and how they basically affected the countries that I've made the part of the triangle, that is China, Russia, and North Korea, individually, and also the overall impact on the dynamics these countries share with each other. Then I will be looking at how the Biden administration potentially changed these. What was the difference between Trump 1.0 and then the Biden administration? Because we already understand that Trump has a very nationalistic view and a very transactional view towards world politics, whereas Biden was more Wilsonian, which basically means that he was more favorable towards the liberal international order. And now that we have Trump, once again, there's also some gap between what the dynamics these countries shared under Biden administration and what they will be sharing under Trump 2.0. So these are the some of the questions that I will be exploring are these, in addition to basically what patterns can I identify from Trump 1.0 and how are they basically going to get either mirrored or they're going to be basically deviated from into Trump, the second administration, basically. The observations I've made so far is that, first of all, as much as I had believed Trump 2.0 to be a wild card, it was not so. The first term, whatever strategies they're taken up there, the same, or at least there is an echo of those strategies in the second term as well. The same rhetoric with China and the same distrust towards Russia, even though there is much more collaboration with Russia than there is with China. North Korea is still a little bit of a mystery here, because there was some engagement during Trump's first administration there, but there hasn't been anything until now. And third thing that I've understood so far is that the administration under Joe Biden has brought these countries considerably closer together. And I need to analyze that better in order to be able to understand how will these countries react to Trump 2.0 now. This also brings about one challenge, is that it is hard to understand which specific events to pick up in order to make sure that the research paper is not speculative but actually grounded in a comparative analysis. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Pretty, this is a pretty ambitious right, project that you have taken up, and it's fine. It's very understandable. But you've taken on three administrations. Trump, the first term, then you have the Biden administration, and the second term, which is barely started. Okay, so really, we don't know which way this is going. Okay, and so far as uh, Russia, China, North Korea are concerned, or that you're talking about a triangle. Now, the triangular relationship is also quite new. All right. China,
Yeah.
North Korea, yes, for a very long time, but not Russia, North Korea. All right. China, Russia is off and on. So you have to be very clear with that. So if you're talking about basically triangle, this was not there in the first administration of Trump. Okay. So basically, you can talk about this in the last administration and the present one that is there. Okay. And this is also in the context of Ukraine. All right. Which you have not mentioned. Okay. Do you see North Korea, Russia, and China kind of collaborating on other things? It's basically about Ukraine, sending North Korean soldiers, etc. I'm not very sure because you see, North Korea is very secretive about what else it does. All right. Whether it's, well, it must be having it's shipping not only people but also arms and things like that. So basically, how do you get that material? What is doing? So you have two, all right. On the one hand, you have the so-called triangle that you're talking about, which is not very well. It's just about a couple of years, all right. If you're thinking in terms of that way, and when you're talking about administrations, leave out the first Trump administration, the end of Biden's, and go to that. Okay, you can work on it definitely. All right, and how this is going to work out. Now you are saying that it's not such a wild card after all. All right, now it is a bit of a wild card in the sense. I mean that well because with Russia. Uh, the way Trump has been kind of dealing, all right, and with China is very difficult, and we don't hear North Korea at all. All right. We heard a lot about it during the Biden administration and all that. But here you see it's Russia with whom it is kind of playing soft, and China, so far as that's concerned, is playing hard. All right. Because why? The objective of Trump is not so much of, basically Biden, etc., all of them, as I said, a liberal democratic order and all that. Here, maybe the objective is not so much, but make America great again, the MAGA thing. All right. So getting jobs back and all that. So bring in those factors too. All right. What are the objectives of the two administrations? Okay. So basically, I think you deal with a few years, I say 2000 to 2025. All right, not even 2000, 2022 to 2025, limited to a few years and work on that, on the two administrations that way. Okay. So basically, your topic was something like uh, Trump 2.0 and the China this thing triangle, right? Okay.
Yes.
Right. So it's not Trump 2.0. You can say the China, the US and China, Russia, North Korea triangle, 22 to 25 or something like that. Just limited. Okay.
Mhm.
So you're bringing in Biden and you're bringing in Trump. Will that work out for you?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. It actually kind of specifies it. I was also worried for how broad it has become.
It was going all over the place. So tighten it. Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shriji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Tanisha ji.
Is it taking place now?
It's not visible, ma'am.
Just give me a minute. It will. Now, it just. Now it's visible?
Yes,
Let
it's
me
visible
press
now.
like. Okay, so let me start. So myself, Tanisha, and I am pursuing Masters in Public Policy from Lucknow University. Very recently, we know that US has has put the fund cuts on many areas. So in this presentation, creative project, I will discuss various dimensions. I will also put some suggestions regarding these long-term short-term suggestions. With that, I will also discuss the angle side of this decision, the positive side of this decision. I will start now. So, as per WHO studies, the impact of these fund cuts will be severe as 50 plus countries were going to face challenge regarding HIV services. 27 countries will face breakdown of tuberculosis and malaria that has projected 15 million deaths and cases 100,000 plus deaths will worsen this year due to this. First of all is the ethical dimension. Now the US that always talks about humanities, human rights, human dignity, while taking this decision uh, has performed opposite from his words. Let me give some points here. So we know that most of the US aids move to large portion goes to food aid, mostly particularly World Food Program, and that covers 150 million people. If these fund cuts happen, it will lead to high malnutrition and high mortality rates. With that food distribution in the countries like Ukraine that are suffering from war or some environmental calamities, who have not capacity of warehouses or they are destroyed, now they will face challenge of foodborne diseases also. Third, we all know that these days countries are facing the migration, opportunity migration, and resource migration also. Now, these funders will risk the stability of the country that will accelerate conflict and lead to resource migration in the world. Other point is that these days we see that the US government is very much involved with private players. So this is also one aspect that with these funds cut, it will benefit the private players because US has put developed and underdeveloped countries in a vulnerable situation where no option is left for them to buy medicine and services from private players. And we all know that as per data, that the US is one of the dominant players in pharmaceutical industry. Next, there's now all the articles in this with this issue that I have gone through mostly discusses about the issues with that are arising with the decision. But I want to thank and mention here Professor who has put the different point of view also. According to him, that he says that colonial legacy in which global South has been positioned as a recipient rather than a leader in health and sciences and innovation must be challenged. So, because it is also true that developing underdeveloped countries can, for how long they can depend on US or some big economy for now. I know it's a challenge for the nations, but it is time for them, for especially global South, to be self-sufficient and develop the capacity. Now, as for long-term suggestion, as I want to mention,
You have 1 minute left, ma'am.
okay, that I want to mention that this needs a collective effort from government, civil societies, and academic institutions, private sector also to come together in these underdeveloped countries and developing countries and bring and create a long-term strategy or plan to facilitate this thing to be self-sufficient. And for short term, I want to suggest that US can extend this one cut for 6 months. This will give a preparatory time for these nations to prepare for this and search for other opportunities available for them to continue these services. Also, the US can divide the US in two categories: essential services and extra-essential services. And US should only focus and help should provide aid to only essential services. Third, for the very important issue of food distribution, I want to WHO with coordinate with the national governments and non-government organizations to resolve this issue. Now, because lack of time, I have not discussed lots of points, but in the blog that I have shared with IMPRI, I have discussed all things in a very detailed manner. As soon as the IMPRI will put it on the website, I will also share the link here. Thank you so much, everyone.
Tanisha, this again, my issue with this is more like a newspaper article than actually a research paper, number one. Secondly, you are mixing up food and health. Now, these are both of them are kind of interlinked, of course, definitely, because well, lack of food, or if there is a food scarcity, that will create well, health crisis. Okay, uh, but in the limited time that you have, rather focus on one thing. All right. Uh, Now, also the third point is when you talk about the global south, you're talking about a huge area. Now, well, cuts to US AID will not basically affect countries like India, for instance, okay? Uh, uh, Whereas it will definitely affect countries in Africa. It may not affect countries like Vietnam, etc. It will not affect countries which basically have their own programs. Now, the health of this thing is the World Health Organization, the WHO, has played a very important role in eliminating major diseases all over the world, all right? Smallpox being, of course, the best example, but apart from that, children's polio, which is almost extinct so far. Now, uh, uh, so basically, uh, in fact, in the short time that you have, the US basically is dealing with the WHO, or rather is not dealing with the WHO, withdrawing its funds from the WHO. How is it going to affect, uh, well, the global south? Okay. And then you come to a solution rather than bringing in USAID and fund cuts and all that, you see, because then it becomes a bit unwieldy. And also, when you talk about the global south, I think if we talk about basically only WHO and global health issues, all right? Like, for instance, the pandemic, all right? WHO was criticized for not really responding so much, and there were vaccines. But the US has also come up with a kind of, you see, I mean, a non-vaccine policy. I mean, they are thinking in terms of that, all right? They don't believe in vaccines, the present administration, okay? Some of them at least, okay? Kennedy. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
how are these going to impact, right, as such, uh, world health, the global south? And here you can take in the global south. So don't bring in USAID because that itself will make another paper.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, things in like, I mean, what are your research questions? That should be clear. The objective of this paper and what is your methodology. Okay, Tanisha?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanisha ji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Varsha ji.
One second, I'm just having an issue with the. Can I do next because I'm actually having a technical trouble in sharing the screen?
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
move to the next presentation by Mannat Bedi ji.
Yes, I'll just share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
It's not visible yet, ma'am.
One second. Is it
It's
visible now?
visible. Yes, it's visible now.
Okay, hi, my name is Mannat, and I'm writing a research paper on BRICS, and I've decided to write a short poem on it. But before that, I would just like to say why I chose BRICS. So BRICS caught my attention because it's becoming more important in today's world. Sorry, just a second. Yeah. Becoming more important in today's world, the countries in BRICS have different economies, but together they're changing the way the world works. With so many challenges around, BRICS gives countries a chance to team up and work towards common goals. As someone interested in global politics and economics, I felt exploring BRICS' future role would be interesting. I decided to write a poem about it because I love creative writing. The Voice of 10. Beneath the sun of southern skies rise nations bold with ancient ties. In unity they choose to lead, crafting changes through thought and deed. Sharing strength in every stride, These lines, you'll see, spell BRICS with pride. Brazil's rhythm, Russia's might, India's voice, and China's sight. South Africa stood strong and free, the roots of BRICS in harmony. Now 5 more nations took their place, expanding dreams, reshaping space. Once 5, now 10, they've grown anew, with Egypt's heart and Ethiopia's view. Indonesia's isles, Iran's proud name, and UAE's desert turned golden flame. Together they forge a world more fair, a multipolar dream laid bare. So BRICS now stands at history's door, not east or west, perhaps much more. A mirror to a world in flux, a challenge to old powers clutch. With hopes high as the morning sun, the race has only just begun. What my research would focus on. So this is the main thing or the main subtopics that I want to focus on under BRICS. So my research focuses on comparing the economies of BRICS. So basically the economic aspects of it. So of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa by looking at the 3 main areas: economic growth, inflation, and income inequality. I will study how each country's economy has grown over the past 20 years, what has caused this growth, and how inflation has been controlled. I will also look at how the benefits of economic growth have been shared among different groups of people and whether inequality has increased or decreased as a result. The reason I am doing this research. The reason I'm doing this research is because BRICS countries are major players in the global economy, but each has followed a different path of economic development. By comparing them, I want to understand which policies have worked well in promoting economic growth and reducing inequality. So not just what has created more wealth, but also the composition of the output of that wealth. This will help me identify successful strategies that could be useful for other developing countries facing similar challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Manat. I really loved your poem. Very nice.
Thank you.
Very creative. So far as your paper is concerned, BRICS now has, as you said, well, it's BRICS Plus. Okay, and there are more countries there. Now, what exactly what exactly are your, I mean, you have mentioned your research questions there, all right. But maybe you should think of the BRICS as a group also, okay. And it has, well, pretty big powers, all right, as well as smaller powers, all right, emerging powers, okay. So can the BRICS, you see, because when you're talking about multipolar world, poles need not necessarily be just countries, all right. They could also be partnerships, groups of countries, okay. What impact these have, all right. So when you're talking about, what impact they've had in their own countries, all right, etc. The BRICS by itself, when we are a member, we have been a member right from the beginning, all right. But in India, basically, what impact has the BRICS had, all right, so far? But it does have an impact as a group, certainly. Okay. Now, individually, all right, okay, it can help improve trade relations between the countries concerned. All right, they can talk about it. It can help improve not only trade, economic trade, but also, all right, working together, all right, having joint naval exercises, etc. All that is very much there. Okay. So it's part of diplomacy, is part of foreign policy. But whether it kind of feeds back into the country, into people's lives, individual lives, I'm not so sure. So basically, deal with it as a group, and what impact basically it has as a group vis-a-vis other groups, all right? Because many of these are members of, say, G20 members, are also members of BRICS, okay? But I don't think a single NATO member is a member of BRICS, all right? Do you get the point, all right? Or Quad, you find again, India is very much part of that, but the others are not part of BRICS, okay? So basically, think of it as a group, and how does it compare with other groups? Okay. Uh, uh, Maybe that will work out better because you're talking about the economic impact or as such on the individual countries concerned. That is one part of it, but there is more to BRICS audit as a grouping, a grouping which crosses boundaries audit as such. It's not just a third world grouping, all right, it's across the board. Okay. Maybe you can just rethink a little bit and put it in your questions because you think about it. I mean, what impact has it had on the lives or what impact has it had on the economy of, well, India itself? All right, maybe it has had on Brazil, all right, but not so much on India or on China. It would not make any difference, all right, as such, whether India or China were members of BRICS on their economies, all right. So rethink it as a group, all right, and what power, what clout it has in the in economics, in military, all right, in the seas, all right. What role does it play? Okay, okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you
And
so much.
lovely poem, lovely poem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, uh, Thank you very much, Sanjukta ma'am. I'd like to point out in this presentation as well. Actually, I'm not able to switch on my camera because of very poor network. So it was, according to me, a very nicely done presentation. But when you were talking about the various kinds of economic aspects which you'd be comparing, and that led to the wealth generation, and perhaps these were the things that you just spoke. So if you could also put in all the parameters, or at least a few parameters, on the economic aspects, what aspects of the economy you're talking about, that can be compared, for example, poverty level or unemployment, or you know various other things, poverty. So if these can be also incorporated, then it would be very holistic, as along with what comments which Professor Bhattacharya just mentioned. So it will be a very holistic paper that could come out of it. So as far as what I could figure out with your presentation was, it is a little vague, or it needs a little more further detailed conceptual note in your presentation. So
So
that's it from me.
parameters like the Human Development Index, GDP, and all of that.
Yes. So if you could put that also in your
Yeah.
presentation, maybe you would be incorporating them, I'm sure, but it should be a little more specific.
Got it. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you. All the best. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Dr. Mehta.
Thank you, Manoj-ji. We will now proceed with the next presentation by Varsha-ji.
One second. Hello, the problem is when I share my window, I think my audio is on mute.
You can share your presentation with us and we'll present it. You can go next.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Shivam Adhikari ji.
Just a second. Is my screen visible now?
Not visible yet, sir.
I'm not sure what the problem is. I think I'll share my presentation as well.
Okay, sure. So we'll move to the next presentation by Tanuj ji.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Okay. So apologies because I'm unable to switch on my camera because I'm in a shared space right now. So not having I don't have the ideal situation to do it, but nevertheless I'll move forward with the presentation. Please give me a few seconds. Wait, let me rejoin the webinar.
Sure, sir.
Okay, I'm having some issues actually. What I'll do is I'll share the presentation to you, if that works. Could you be able to share it?
Sure, sir. Okay.
Okay, that's great.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am, but in this file, was my screen visible?
Yes, yes, your screen is
Yeah.
visible.
Okay, so should I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Okay. Okay, so the topic that I'm going to cover, the research question is like during 2022 and 2024, between this time, while USA and the European Union and all the bigger nations and the states, while they were completely involved in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, what was happening in the East, and specifically in the Indo-Pacific region, will be the major my interest and to research on that. And I'd also like to see that the Western states, particularly the USA and its allies, as we say, while they were locked in military, diplomatic, and ideological standoff with Russia, so while looking westward, the East was equally realigning. For instance, all those in South China Sea and the conflict between China and Taiwan. So while this project will not assess how US is declining or how its impact on the East is declining, but what will be the major focus will be what happened in the East and the Southeast while Washington's gaze was elsewhere. And what strategies did China specifically employ for countries, for these smaller states like Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Taiwan, and South China Sea, basically? And with the rise of the militia activity, the navy, the postcard patrols, and the craze on operations in the disputed water, how did this discourse actually take place? While I'll also be looking on to how uh, the states were hedging and the concepts of ontological security and constructivism, while all these smaller states what actions they were taking, was it completely driven by their sense of security, or was it also through their sense of identity that they wanted to preserve? For instance, Taiwan would like to be called as an independent democratic state, as a sovereign state. So is it this force that was driving them to act in a certain manner or not? So each of them exercised strategic agency that was somewhere like based on the threat of like how they perceive the threat, or threat over here could be seen as China, and how the national identities and the strategic what kind of room was created for strategic maneuvering. Like Shovik ji, initially he talked about the comprehensive strategic partnership in 2023 of Vietnam and USA. So these key takeaways in this region will be integral to this research for this timeline between 2022 and 24. And even for that matter of fact, for Malaysia and Indonesia, while they were even modernizing the naval capabilities, and they reinforced their defense diplomacies at the same time. And while I was talking about this idea of neither bandwagoning completely with China nor aligning exclusively with the USA. So we'll see how these smaller states were keeping strategic options open and a rational move in an uncertain system, while the West was already preoccupied. But that does not mean that US was not involved in this region again. So the question is no longer whether China dominates this region or not, but how this regional order will be reconstructed by these powers, and how these smaller states are actively redefining the balance in the Indo-Pacific through their agency, through diplomacy, and through strategic recalibration, and how their actions that are going to reveal the dynamic regional architecture where power is will be contested, and not just vertically, but between big powers as well as between these middle powers or these small powers or the actors that are involved in this region. So that's pretty much it. And I think one thing that I didn't cover was yeah, like my primary sources, how I'm going to cover all this entire project will be through official speeches, statements, and foreign ministry documents, and the media narratives that were not only spread on their own states, but what kind of narratives were being curated in the neighboring states. Uh, yeah, thank you.
Um, Thank you, Shiva. That was interesting, definitely. Basically, you're talking about beyond Ukraine and China in the South China Seas in the Indo-Pacific. Okay, how it has grown, and it looks like basically, what is your background? You are an IR student, right?
Yes, ma'am. First year IR student.
Okay. So, since you're an IR student, I'd rather basically you went about it and since you have mentioned theoretical lens, all right, why don't you basically put it maybe a constructivist lens or something like that? I mean, looking at it from one theoretical aspect or even multi-theoretical and see which fits. Okay. If you're thinking of constructivists, all right, why not basically looking at uh, China's growth in the Indo-Pacific region. Uh, Forget about Ukraine, all right? I mean, that can be your intro, all right? Because you're not going into Ukraine at all after that. I mean, you just mentioned it that the US, Europe, etc., were all busy, and then of course China was growing. So forget Ukraine in your title itself. And so why don't looking at China's growth in Indo-Pacific, all right, through a constructive lens or something like that, okay? Constructivist lens, all right, okay. Something like that, or uh, uh, well, uh, China's growth in the Indo-Pacific region, and then you can put a colon and see. Well, raise a question. Strategic hedging, or whatever you want to put it. Okay. Now, basically, here, in fact, you find that in fact this year, in the last few months, this has grown even more because of Donald Trump's tariff things. All right. China is making well, an all-out effort, I think, and it's going to make an all-out effort even more. This is going to grow over the next few months, or right as such, to bring Vietnam. Look at the way they've been sending out, all right, messages and traveling also. Okay, Vietnam, Malaysia, etc. Uh, so far as trade is concerned, economically, I mean, the connections are growing, and primarily this is what a counter to, uh, well, the United States, and that's because of the economic. It doesn't really matter to China, but it certainly matters to China so far as its own economic growth is concerned, and this region is concerned, because well, it has a big uh, balance of trade in favor of China, all right, with all these countries and India too, all right. So this is very important. So United States, even if there are high tariffs and all that, it cuts off trade with China. It has to grow this side. So basically, it's not a question of only, you know, throwing its military power in the South China Seas. Now, in fact, particularly, it is also seeking, well, it has always done that. Well, the hand of friendship even more. Okay. So basically, this idea of strategic hedging, all right, is very much important in the present context. And maybe you should focus on that. And I think put the entire thing into a theoretical uh, setting. All right. It'll sound even better. It looks like a research paper. All right. Even more so. Now, it's slightly here and there. For instance, Ukraine doesn't come in after, well, although it's the main title. All right. It's the primary title. And then you have colon and going on. But where is Ukraine otherwise? Okay. So forget it completely. Basically, focus on China in the Indo-Pacific and put it uh, uh, basically strategic hedging or whatever, I mean, that you want to put it. Okay. Think about it in current times.
Oh,
Does that?
thank you, Professor. Yeah, yes, Professor. But one question, like, my initial thought was like, the first time when I discussed my initial abstract with you, like of an U.S. absent world order, but as you said that it was too ambitious. But in this paper, I thought of only focusing on China. But as you recommend that, I should also think about the economics and the trade factor. So in that aspect, so U.S. Like in this paper, will U.S. automatically come in? So
Of course, the US will come in
yeah.
because it's the way it's going now, the way that China is wooing, all right, Southeast Asian market is primarily because of the United States, because of the Trump administration, right? It already has a strong foothold there, but uh, so that the tariffs really don't hurt China. They want a closer connection with Southeast Asian states, right? So it comes in automatically. I mean, directly and indirectly. All right. So bring that in. But I think, as I said, I mean, that was a bit ambitious. That was really big. But here, focus it. All right. And I said, even focus it even more by bringing in a theoretical lens. Right? Okay. Does that work for you?
Yes, Professor, it does.
Okay. Thank you, Shiva.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Shivamji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Varshaji.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Varsha Jose, and I will be presenting on Indian American political influence in the US India relations. So, as we all know now, like the Indian diaspora has a really significant role in the diplomacy of India because the current government gives them a lot of importance, especially during the high profile visits. So, Indian American community is almost 4 million in US, and recently there is a rising in the political representation by them because in 2014 the number was just one Indian American in the Congress, but now it's almost six. When it comes to diaspora and politics, the thing is, depending on the political environment, sometimes diaspora can be really active and an awakened diaspora. Sometimes it can be a dormant one. But I would say, like right now, if we see that in the case of US, we do have a comparatively active diaspora. Next slide, please. So I will be particularly looking at the Congressional Caucus on India and Indian Americans in the US Congress. So now they do call the 6 Indian American representatives in the House as Samosa Caucus. So I will be looking at some of the instances that happened under this congressional caucus. The first one is during the first term of President Trump, he actually made a statement where he said that the Prime Minister requested him to mediate on the Kashmir issue during a press interaction, along with Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. But at that time, this congressional caucus actually stood in defense of India. And then the next is India US civil nuclear deal. And so some of the influential members of this caucus group actually supported a lot of Indian American organizations, and they were able to secure the votes of almost 39 members in the Senate, and they did contribute to the deal a lot. And next slide. Thank you. So they have also made some comments on the issues that's happening in India. So an example is the farmers' protest. So one of the members of this caucus actually made a tweet saying that there should be enough space for them to do peaceful protest in India to restore the internet access and everything. So that was also, you can see that how they do make comments on the domestic politics also. So I would say that the Indian diaspora is significantly important for both the political parties in US because of their political mobilization. So there's a large number of Indian diaspora, especially in the swing states. So having a positive response from the Indian diaspora is significant for them, especially for the presidential election. Next slide. Thank you. So this caucus group, it does have its own limitations, but there are certain things that they can look into to improve their current working condition. First is to focus on the shared interest area between US and India, especially the ongoing trade war with China, terrorism. There are like a lot of economic interest right now. Then advocacy, I would say that they can also like put forward why India should be given priority and try to convey that to the American public as well as the bureaucracy. Next is the policy dialogue. So, as we know, the geopolitical situation is like has extremely changed. So, at this situation, this caucus group can also play a significant role between the policy dialogues of the at the government level between both the countries, especially by putting India at a priority level. So if you look at the politics of US, there are a lot of other influential lobbies of other diasporas, especially the Israel diaspora is like known for their lobbying. So they can maybe also look into the strategies that they have adopted. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha. Diaspora studies, of course, is a very uh, well, it's got wide dimensions, and in fact, we're getting more and more interested in the diaspora, primarily because, especially in the since 2014, because even earlier, of course, but especially since then, because the present government has been wooing the diaspora for various reasons. Okay. Now, what I want you to understand is you're talking about the Indian American, you're talking about the Indian American political community. Uh, now, the political community is there, and there is also the diaspora, which is much larger than the political community. And the other thing is that you're talking about the India caucus, which is actually it's not just Indians, but there are plenty of they are paid already as such to basically bring India's interests into the Congress when things are well, whether it's economics, whether it's as you said, the nuclear deal at that point of time, where of course the India caucus plays a very important role, or as you said, the farmers' protests. All right, when accusations of being non-democratic or it is there. So they're paid to basically play an important role. Now, be very clear exactly what you are talking about. Whether you want to work on the India caucus in the Congress, all right, and how basically it swings, all right, political decisions in favor of India, okay, and you can take a time frame for that, okay, or you can talk about the diaspora and why is it important for India, okay, or for that matter, the political community and why it is important for American politics. Primarily Indians, as you know, the people of the Indian diaspora, or rather people of Indian origin, they're among the highest earning, all right, in the United States. Not only among the immigrants, but well, they earn more than the white Americans taken as a whole. Okay, so basically they are an economic base, and they regularly get basically for campaign funds and all that. They get letters from the parties, they are invited to political dinners, etc. Those were important. And as you know, more and more Indians are also standing, all right, assessed for various posts, not only in the Congress, but almost every post is elected out there. So at different levels, they are standing over there. So, Varsha, what I'd like you to do is be clear as to exactly what you are working on. You're working on political community or the India caucus or the Indian diaspora. Again, be clear about whether you want to work on how the diaspora is helping India, all right, or the India caucus is helping Indian policymakers, all right, or basically Indian issues, okay, or how the Indian diaspora is joining American politics, okay. If uh, uh, it's very interesting, but there are many dimensions to it. And since you have a limited time and you have to write a research paper, not a thesis, so take one dimension. Okay, how does that work out?
Uh,
What
Thank you.
what would you like to do, Varsha? I mean, what exactly are you?
Because I was thinking like how this caucus actually helped during the time of the India-US nuclear deal, because they worked along with other Indian political group, not Indian political, Indian American groups in US to influence the senators. So I was trying to look into more like, their interaction with the community also.
In fact, that is more interesting because very little work has been done on the India caucus. Uh,
Okay.
Work on the India caucus in that case, all right, and just leave it to the India caucus, which doesn't mean the Indian diaspora, all right?
Okay, ma'am.
So the India caucus in the Congress, the US Congress.
Yeah.
Okay, that should be very interesting and take a time frame because it's been there for a very long time. Earlier, it was not so influential,
Yeah.
but in this century, they have been influential. Uh, so take a time frame. I mean, and work on specific issues where they have played a very important role, right?
Okay, ma'am.
And in fact, you have taken, you talked about the nuclear deal, you've
Yes,
taken
ma'am.
the farmers' issues, okay? Take one or two more and discuss that. What role has the India caucus played in shaping American congressional opinion? Okay,
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
right? Okay.
Siva ma'am, would like to share your remarks?
Yes, thank you very much, Ria, and thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, for your elaborate comments. Yes, I totally agree to what Madam has mentioned, and I think that will also give a good insight into what you are wanting to actually focus on. My concern is yes, there should be a time frame. However, it uh, in order to get into the specificities, the whole thing becomes very broad when you are involving the entire spectrum of the diaspora, the caucus, etc. So yes, it is very important to have a timeline and. How are these how is the India caucus, how has it helped in furthering the US India relations, because all the caucuses that exist is actually for maintaining or for fostering better bilateral ties with respect to that particular country, since you mentioned Israel. So that kind of lobbyism, or that kind of efforts that the members make. So there are two things. One is for what purpose? What is the actual reason behind it? Maybe if you focus on the details of it, you will be able to get a lot of literature. And I'd suggest you to read Devesh Kapoor. He has written extensively, researched extensively across the US. And he has also been news that was coming in that he'll be the South Asian representative of the US government. So you can go through his work. He has written extensively. So how are they actually fostering better ties with India, whether they are actually working for the benefit, the actual benefit leans towards the United States, or whether it is for India, and what is the intent behind it, because one side, the nuclear deal was good bilaterally, it was a win-win situation. But again, if you talk about the farmers protest, so it was kind of a biased approach that they took, and whether that was beneficial for furthering the bilateral ties, that could be one of the questions. So I think if you really are wanting to focus on the India caucus, you should focus what is the real intent, and also maybe draw down towards the end as an update about what's the actual status of the caucus, given the dilemma that the Indian diaspora actually is faced with the current in the current administration. Because actually there are a lot of members who are Indian Americans, now citizens, but are they a true voice of the Indian diaspora, whether on whatever visa, whether they have been granted citizenship, or whether they are on H-1B, or the green card holders. That kind of a discontent is there, the dilemma is there. So if all these things could be brought in, it would move on to becoming a very easy paper. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. And the name that you mentioned is Devesh Kapoor, right?
Yes, Varsha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Varshaji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Tanuj.
So am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, great. Yes, so greetings everyone. I'm Tanuj. So I'll be presenting on this topic titled Terrorist Safe Havens in the Volatile States of Africa. So let's first understand the issue. So across Africa, particularly in the regions like the Sahel and the Horn of Africa, the collapse of effective governance created breeding grounds for different operation lines, and this has basically led to the proliferation of. And these areas are often labeled as ungoverned spaces and are exploited by extremist groups that thrive amidst the political chaos that ensues in these spaces. So the objectives of my research article include, like political and structural determinants, like to study and to gain more insights into the political and structural factors which facilitate the development of terrorist state in these failed political scenarios. The second one is to gain deeper insights into the role of state and non-state actors in countering terrorism within these failed states. And the third one is youth vulnerabilities and regional patterns. So next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, the next one. No, this is the last one. I'm talking about the second slide.
This is the only slide that is coming. Can you share from your end?
Okay, sure, no issues. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Okay. Okay, so this is the next slide. So let's learn more about the vulnerability that we are witnessing in Africa. So, continent's fragile states are characterized by weak civil institutions, primarily, and deep socio-political divides, and also minimal state controls, which, like all of these factors, are also coupled with ethnic conflicts that we witness there, ethnic and tribal conflicts. And these conditions provide an operational haven for extremist groups to organize, radicalize, and launch cross-border attacks. So terrorist networks are increasingly using failed and weakened states not just as hideouts but also as strategic bases for expanding their influence and even like perpetuate their ideological beliefs. And they are also carrying out logistical support, training, and recruitment of young members. And as a matter of fact, around 60% of Africa's unemployed population is youth population, and Africa, when it comes to the youth demography, it is one of the leading continents in the entire world. So this has led to a rise in asymmetric warfare and regional destabilization. So talking about the hotspots of terror and instability, we do see that Lake Chad Basin, encompassing parts of Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, has become a significant battleground for leading terrorist groups like the Boko Haram and its outfits. Somalia, which is in the Horn of Africa, has become has been plagued by prolonged civil conflict, and it remains a core base for Al-Shabaab, while Mali and Sudan continues to face militant insurgencies and governance crisis. These conflicts have triggered large-scale displacement, resulting in millions of refugees and internally displaced peoples and a severe toll on human lives. Uh, okay, there is also this concept of new terrorism, which is very much relevant in the current context because we are witnessing an evolution when it comes to the terrorist activities, and like modern technology has been incorporated in this spectrum. and use of information, use of media, use of cyber attacks have been. So next slide. Okay, sorry, I'm controlling. Yes. So youth, and this is a response to my third question. So Africa, as I've already said, is home to one of the youngest populations in the entire world, and like in conflict regions, this demographic dividend is turning into a vulnerability. The rise of terrorist violence directly threatens the aspirations, security, and future of millions of young Africans. And what are the key implications? So, radicalization and recruitment, firstly. The economies of most of these countries are shattered, and job opportunities are really less. The youth are very easily disillusioned, and they are recruited by these terrorists. And there is also this false sense of identity and belonging, often when it comes to these terrorist factions. Secondly, so persistent.
To wind up, sir.
Yeah, okay, sure. So, okay, let me read out the points firstly. Okay. So, disruption of education and skill development. Thirdly, unemployment and economic despair and mental health crisis. That's very important. Okay. Let's look at the bigger picture. This is the conclusion and the way forward. So, of course, like terrorism doesn't just destabilize nations, it robs the continent of its future leaders, veterans and builders. And without urgent intervention, an entire generation risks growing up in perpetual conflict, eroding the prospects for peace, prosperity, and regional progress. So, yeah, I have also included a very short paragraph about my journey. So, it has been quite an enthralling journey here, and I got to learn from leading luminaries like Professor Swaran Singh, the Honorable Ambassador, the former Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Shashank, and Sanjukta ma'am. Like, there are many experts in this domain, and I'm so happy to be a part of this initiative. Thank you so much. That's all. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Tanuj. It's very interesting, but it's again very, very wide. Now, Africa, as you know, I mean, it has many, many countries. Okay, 54. Well, some say that basically the Sahel, it's 55. Uh, Now, you are dealing with a swath of countries, starting across or right as such right through the middle of Africa that you're talking about. Also, you're talking about the Horn of Africa. Now, well, in the map that you showed, uh, Nigeria, the Congo. Well, first of all, you have to define, okay, what is terrorism? Uh, and basically, in that context, all right, what is new terrorism? New terrorism, all right? In that context, basically take some groups, okay? As you have already mentioned, Al-Shabaab is there, Boko Haram. Then there was a Lord something or the other army, which is in Uganda and is still there, all right, which is actually a Christian organization. Now, Boko Haram uh, does owe allegiance or did owe allegiance for some time at least to the ISIS. All right. It did have Islamic this thing. So they kind of, learn from each other. They also interact with each other. All right. And then again, they fall apart. Now, you did talk about, of course, why people are drawn to terrorism, and you're talking about youth unemployment and all that. Okay. Uh, I would rather you did not take Africa as a whole. Take some select countries or you take some select organizations. In fact, I would rather you took some select countries. How failed states, all right? How terrorism basically finds a haven in failed states, all right? Uh, and then you have to explain what is a failed state, okay? And then basically explain terrorism and how well it goes on over there. And you can take two or you can take three, okay? Uh, there are various forms. I mean, because you see, fighting or war or civil war, this is not terrorism, all right? Children are inducted into terroristic activities like that Lord's Army in Uganda, for instance. I mean, the very, very small children. Also into sexual abuse and things like that, which is also there, which is part of terrorism. In Boko Haram, you find that also in Uganda, you do find that, okay? Uh, Now, an uprising or something like that, all right, that cannot be. They can take, they can use, all right, for instance, in Sudan, uh, in Darfur, the measures that were taken over there, I mean, by the government, all right, the government forces, okay, these amounted to terroristic activities, but they're not terrorists, all right, they were state actors, okay, and those who were fighting them, all right, as such, they were not non-state, they're not state actors, but they're defending themselves, all right. So you have to define what is terrorism, what is a failed state, what basically who is branded a terrorist, and ISIS, etc. They're all terrorists, or they're terrorist organizations. Why are they called terrorist organizations? And what is it that attracts or it as such people to them? Okay, is it because they're unemployed, or is it because of the religiousness thing that they're talking about, or is it combination of both? All right, because there has to be a certain distinct attraction for people to join. It cannot be only, you don't want to give up your life in a bomb attack if it's just economic, all right, as such. So basically be careful, and you've taken the whole of Africa. Now whole of Africa is very large, it's the largest continent, it's really, and it has Africa, well, has countries, all right, and there's so many countries in that. Some of them are failed, some of them are certainly not failed states, all right. You cannot call South Africa a failed state, okay. So basically either you take a state or you take a terrorist organization and
Actually,
work
in
on that.
the article that I had shared, I did like include a table with a like it contained a list of failed states, and the definitions were also given. So in the presentation, it has not been included because I was short on time, so I had to prepare this. Yes,
Okay,
I'll do the refinement, of course. No issues.
do the
Thank you so
refinement
much.
and don't take Africa as a whole. Okay,
Sure, sure.
because it's huge and not all states are failed states. Egypt, can you call that a failed state?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, there are many other states which you cannot call them failed
Yes,
states, all right, certainly not.
right.
Some are very poor, all right, certainly, but they're not failed states, okay?
Yes, sir.
So you cannot, I mean, even Namibia, for that matter, or Botswana, these are not failed states, okay? Uh, so basically take uh, either failed states, and what you can, you have to define what is a failed state, or you take terrorist organizations and where they flourish and why they flourish, all right? Uh, okay, but specify which states you're taking or which organizations.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
not Africa as a whole. Okay,
Sure, sure. Thank you, ma'am.
and the Africans would not like that if you take the whole of Africa.
Got it.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanakji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Ananda Krishnanji.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Okay, I'm really like to discuss about the topic ocean diplomacy.
If
It's
you
I'm
could
using these
be a
terms
little
as
loud.
sorry.
Sir, if you could please be a little loud.
Okay. I'm discussing about the ocean diplomacy. So I'm using this in ocean diplomacy as an umbrella term, and I also really like to explore the much more aspects of this term, like the ocean lives, protecting the ocean life, especially the trade and maritime boundaries and conflicts in the maritime boundaries, and conserving biodiversity and peaceful navigation and security. Like peaceful navigation and securities are really important in the trade, and I would like to mention some of the incidents happens in the recent times, like the cross-border terrorism, piracy attacks, which happened in the last year in Sudan, and Indian Navy had an operation there, and the recent incident happened in the Arabian Sea, like presence of drug cartels and capturing the 300 crore, 3,000 crore net worth of narcotic substances. These are all the parts I am including in these studies. Like these all are the hazards happening to the marine trade and systems. Like the most importantly, the piracy, and also there is a big problem to this is the unprecedented climatic changes, and which will lead to happening the all the storms and hurricanes happening in the most of these countries, and which will affecting our country in the places like Odisha, and most of the times it happens in the Bay of Bengal, and it is shifting to the Arabian Sea also. And I would really like to mention about the cross border maritime boundaries. We are having so many issues with the Sri Lanka about the boundary in the Bay of Bengal region. Like our fishermen are mostly crossing the international borders, and the Sri Lankan army is captivating them, and we need to have that. We need to have to be in talks with them recently and having issues to be closed. And I'm basically running this do this research on this to make a resolutions on maritime conflicts, which I mentioned earlier, and also try to mention in these points conflict over the exclusive economic zones, territorial water, maritime boundaries, and using equitable and responsible exploitations of uh, fishery, seabed minerals, energy sources. It's a vast topic, and I'm also interested in the climatic conditions also, and our problems with ocean acidification, sea level rise, loss of marine ecosystems, and also very important due to the recent times is that the unprecedented trade war between the traditional allies like the European and the US, and new conglomerates happening between the like already mentioned by some of the person like China, Russia, and North Korea. So we need an unimpeded global shipping routes for trade and its transmissions, and also research and development needed for this ocean, because which is the most unexplored areas in the world. We have so many space expeditions and funded and projects regarding the space expeditions, but we have limited the ocean explorations, and we need also collaboration from countries, and using artificial intelligence and machine learning should be incorporated in the new studies. And these are some of the institutions and regional partnerships that helps in regulating and controlling these institutions. And also like to mention some of these institutions and their part in controlling our sea routes and its future endures. And why I'm choosing this ocean diplomacy matters, it's because of geopolitical stability. It's really important to the nowadays, because there is a trade war happening, and most of due to the globalization we are much more interconnected with each other. Without our stability in geopolitical situations, there will be no future for, and it will lead to an Armageddon or something like that. And much more economic interests are being putting forward by the rest of the countries. We have to be having open positions to differentiate these problems like that, and maintaining regional cooperations with the neighboring countries, and having so that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda Krishna. Uh, if I may make a comment, this is you need to focus your article a bit, right? Because you've talked about a lot of things, but the thoughts are all over the place, and uh, this is not okay for a research paper, all right? Uh, in fact, why don't because you're talking about all these organizations, etc. At one point of time, why marine diplomacy is important, uh, and you're bringing in uh, the laws of the seas, the United Nations, etc., etc., etc. But that that has to be streamlined. It has to be focused. All right. Why do you not basically reshape your paper to talk about, well, basically ocean diplomacy, uh, an objective study or objective analysis of UN conventions, all right, and basically analyze those uh, conventions, how far they have worked and where they have not worked, all right, leading to, in fact, well, sometimes regional forums like the Indian Ocean rim organizations. Okay, there are these regional organizations. Why are they needed? Primarily because the United Nations cannot implement, all right, its uh, various conventions. It does not have that implementation authority. Whereas you see, well, India or major, larger countries, all right, they can, all right. And there are countries like China which bring these conventions in any case, all right? So, which is there. Now, the need for ocean diplomacy, that is fine, all right? But you should, I think, focus it down to maybe, and I think this is very important, that you should look at only UN conventions and how far they have worked, if that is okay with you.
Okay, okay.
Do you agree, Anand Krishna?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because you have taken on too much on your plate, and it'll be difficult to kind of, you see, digest the entire thing. Okay, so just streamline it a bit. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ananda Krishnanji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Pranavji. Pranavji, are you there, sir?
Yeah, I think you can. Oh, yeah, he's there.
There's some mic issue, ma'am, I think.
And yeah, meanwhile, may I ask how many are left now?
Around 11 people, ma'am.
11. Okay.
In the meanwhile, should we proceed with the next one? Or
Hello.
yeah, we can hear you now.
I'll just share my screen. Is it visible?
No,
Not
sir,
yet.
Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible now, sir.
Uh, Hi, good evening. My name is Pranav, and I apologize firstly for not switching on my camera because there's a technical issue, and also for my bad voice. So I've been sick for a while now, and and also I would like to apologize for another thing, saying that given my work bandwidth, I've not been able to prepare a proper PPT. This is very amateur, and I'll start with it. So my topic is integrating ancient India's ethical diplomacy and strategic statecraft into the world's foreign. I'll probably make it India's foreign policy framework, not the world, because there's a error over here. So, where does this idea come from? Is the first question. So while I was reading Dr. S. Jaishankar's book, The India Way, certain lines, caught my interest, saying that how India's ancient wisdom, or the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, has been, a contemporary guiding light for the, a guiding light for the contemporary foreign policy for, contemporary foreign policies for India. And on that light, I started digging more into it, and through my initial findings or initial readings, I just found out that how advanced or how uh, way diplomatically our ancient text was way ahead of its time. I just like to want to quote here a line from the Arthashastra where Chanakya says that Hetuta Shatru Mitrasya Bhavishyati. So it basically means that any nation would become allies of another with a specific intention or a motto, and eventually becomes a non-ally or an enemy for the same purpose. So if you take this point, you can just gauge that how Chanakya was thinking about international borders and foreign diplomacy, or how do we, or a nation cross-border aspects, if I have to put it that way. So from there, I actually also went on to look into some of the aspects from the Mahabharata, where we all know Sri Krishna. He goes into the Kauravas' courtroom, and he asks for the 5 villages to give it to the Pandavas, and later we all know what happened. So even that, it also interests me, saying that how diplomacy in that aspect, in negotiation and foreign diplomacy can be looked into from that aspect. And the research question which I basically want to address is how can the diplomatic principles from the Mahabharata and basically from the ancient texts inform and development of a modern Indian foreign policy framework to address contemporary global and regional challenges. So you would be surprised to know that many of the answers for international relations questions that arise in day-to-day lives can be traced back to our ancient scriptures, where the detailed or elaborate answers or sorry, detailed answers or notes have been given. Sorry. So my basic understanding is we can bring together this ancient knowledge and contemporary foreign diplomacy together. As Prime Minister Modi said, we are looking at the Viksit Bharat to 2047, and we are taking inspiration from our ancient ages, and we are looking for a 1,000-year, for a 1,000-year future. So in that aspect, I think it becomes very important. Moving forward, so what I found out was that, as I mentioned, Krishna's peace mission, as a model for righteous negotiation, how he went into there, and when there was ruckus created by the Kauravas, and how he managed to come back there and started the war, and eventually he did all the things in his periphery to stop the war, or uh, to bring all of them to an amicable ground, or to make them at least agree to something that's acceptable to everybody. And I have to say, Chanakya's Rajamandala. So it's like, how do you be with your neighbors? He says that how are you keeping your neighbors is like how I mean, the way you keep your neighbors, or is the way that the state will, I mean, the entire country is based upon that. So yeah, that's it. And my goal will be probably blend Mahabharata's ethics and Arthashastra strategy for a modern Indian foreign policy model. I've started reading various scriptures like from the Arthashastra. I was just reading a book called Relevance of Kautilya for Today by Dr. K.S. Naranacharya. So I got a lot of references from that, and how and case studies as well, mapping ancient ideas to modern events like G20 or SARC, or etc. And I would also thinking of having conversations like scholars For example, like Dr. Shatavdani, Dr. R. Ganesh. So he extensively speaks about Chanakya, Mahabharata, and the Arthashastra as well. So I aim to do that. So the basic focus is to bridge ancient wisdom with modern needs. So what I plan to do is I'll take it in about 2 to 3 aspects. That is, one is in uh, foreign diplomacy, how our ancient texts define foreign policy, or how is it mentioned there. Second one is espionage and spy work, or the military activities. What does it say about that, and how is it really relevant, or what can be done to that? And the last part is soft power. How can India be, as an emerging soft power, uh, tell the world that we had all of these ancient knowledge treasures in ourselves, and how can we push it to a global order is what I'm trying to establish here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pranav. Interesting work, but a lot of work has already been done on this kind of thing, as you can see in newspapers and all that, even books which are coming out. Okay. What I want you to understand is the difference between diplomacy and foreign policy. Now, in your title, of course, you yourself said that the words foreign policy, I mean, there's no such thing as a words foreign policy. You're going to change it to India's foreign policy framework. Now, uh, also, basically, uh, diplomacy and strategic statecraft. Is that what you said? Uh,
Yes, yes.
yeah, diplomacy and then you talk about foreign policy. Now, diplomacy is the way you carry out your foreign policy. Foreign policy is a policy, all right? Uh, you know the difference between diplomacy and foreign policy, right? I mean, all these
Yes,
classes that you've been attending.
yes, yes,
Diplomacy is not the same as forein policy.
yes, yes.
Foreign policy, a country has a foreign policy, and diplomacy is the way you carry it forward, all right?
I understand.
So
Yes.
you are using diplomacy and strategic statecraft into India's foreign policy, all right? Whether it can be brought in at all. Strategic statecraft, yes, I can understand. Diplomacy, if you're thinking of the Mandala theory, uh, is that what you're talking about? I mean, the Mandela theory as a statecraft, strategic
Yes,
statecraft?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Along with that, some things about the espionage and
About espionage into, yeah.
yeah.
And that has always been there. Now, so far as India's foreign policy, I mean, okay, uh, uh, maybe it'd be even more interesting if you can bring out how much it fits and how much it does not fit. All right. The other part of it also. Okay. Because first of all, uh, Mandala theory is all about alliances. Okay. Also, if you look at the Mahabharata, I mean, it was also about alliances. All right. Forming alliances. Now, India has been non-aligned, and today also, well, sometimes we call it multi-alignment, but are we aligned to anybody? Do we have any allies? Because allies means a certain thing. I mean, when you do international relations, all right, as such, language matters a lot, all right? Nobody is our ally. We have partners, all right? Economic partners. We have, well, like the Quad, all right? It's a partnership, all right, between nations, but we don't really have allies. So we're not multi-aligned or anything like that because we are not aligned. All right. So can we call ourselves non-aligned? Non-aligned means with alliance with none. All right. So if you take it as a very broad this thing, yes, we are still, following that kind of same non-alignment, but we basically seek friendship, which also earlier we did. We seek partnerships where we need to. All right. And of course, this changes. All right. So when you are discussing, because this business of how far there is the similarity, where ethics has continued, where ethics has not continued, uh, even Mahabharata is criticized for, well, because the Gita is all about ethics and all that, but when it comes to the war itself, where was ethics? All right. Uh, the ethics of war was not followed in many circumstances. Okay. So, what I what would be more interesting, since there has been so much work being done about, I mean, how the ancient, and that happens everywhere. I mean, you have these medieval and ancient philosophers in Western political thought, in Chinese political thought. I mean, they also, of course, influence modern diplomacy and thinking in diplomacy. Sun Tzu, etc., are also brought in. When it comes to Chanakya, we also think of Machiavelli, all right, and there are others, all right. We talk about war and the theories of war, all right. So this is not really all that new, all right. What you can bring in is how much it does influence, how much it can basically be there, all right, and how much basically is not there, all right. Because ultimately, foreign policy and diplomacy, particularly, is in the national interest. Now, what is in today's national interest? And national interest, of course, has been was there right through, whether it was during the Maurya times or whether it is now. All right, what is in the nation's interest? Okay, but in today's world, where in fact it's a much, what should I say, much more interconnected world, and where also it's a more violent world, where in fact there are nuclear weapons, etc. We have to step carefully. So when you think in terms of dharma, and we think in terms of ethics, all right, as such. Uh, we think in terms of Raj Dharma, all right, also. But how much does that fit in? Because ultimately, as they say that, Chanakyan philosophy and Machiavellian this thing, we have to calculate in terms of what is in the nation's interest, all right? What is the nation's interest? And what is the nation's interest is primarily safeguarding its territories, its economic well-being, all right? Um, its rise, economic rise, all right, and basically its population, all right, safeguarding. So where does that fit in? Maybe you can bring in the other side also, all right, uh, because so much has been written about that everything is kind of connected. Everything is from Mahabharata and everything is from the Ramayana. It was all there, all right. Why don't you also discuss where we deviate? Maybe that will make it more interesting. All right, in the contemporary world, can it be adapted in toto? You get my point?
Yeah, sure. I get it.
Okay, maybe a little bit of that should make it more interesting, because, as I said, a lot has been written about how we had rockets and we had everything. You see, from the earliest times. Okay, so basically, even nuclear warfare, if it comes to that, from earlier times, the Brahmastra and stuff like that. But all that is there. We do not know exactly what was there. So examine basically these Chanakya and, as you said, the Mahabharata in the modern context, and how far it does basically apply and how far it does not apply. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pranavji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Siddhartha ji.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, just give me a moment to pull up my presentation.
Where is your topic?
Just give me a minute. Sorry. Yes. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Siddharth, and I will be discussing the topic for my paper, Situating the Middle Power in the Buffer State, conceptual discussion. I'm sorry, I seem to have lost my presentation. Is it moving? Uh, Sorry, is my slideshow moving?
Yes, it's moving. It's on motivation page, sir.
Right. So as a student of history, I've always been interested in the dynamics of power as exercised by the great power. And this, doing a study of various great powers across history, again, led me to question how the buffer state or the less powerful or middle powers featured in this dynamic as both influencing and participatory entities. And in this regard, I go to my paper, which is the New Great Games. I approach this paper with three main agendas. The first is to understand how the middle power as a geopolitical institution and a buffer features in the power contestants between great powers. I attempt to understand how the correlation of theoretical and historical information can be used to build our idea of the middle power, since this is a very broad term. And finally, as my title suggests, I will be looking at the term great game in the context of the middle power. Now, methodology will be mainly based on a theoretical discussion with correlations to historical data. I will be attempting to build a theoretical base based on various studies from both IR and history, and then I'll be correlating it with contemporary geopolitics in order to understand how the new great game term comes about. And my preliminary theoretical observations are as follows. So the idea of the great power has a much more apparent definition, which is any state, empires, nations, such who are able to distinguish themselves from their contemporaries within a defined shared space by virtue of several factors, economic, military, technological, political, etc., which allows them to exert a much greater degree of influence and enforce their will over actors with competing interests. And the relationship between the great and middle power comes up in this sense. While the middle power is mainly defined in terms of the great power, seeing how its regional interests align with that of the great power. Because while the middle power may not be as powerful as the great power in the terms of several factors, it still has enough influence that the great power considers it a potential partner or ally in various definitions of the term. And this can again find discussion in several theories where you have the idea of the core and the heartland, which can be correlated with the idea of the greater power. And with that of the peripheral zone, which again looks at the middle power, the peripheral zone existing between various great powers and thus being influenced by relations between them. And the idea that the great powers, because of certain factors, are more distinguished than others, also means that direct conflicts between these would have much greater costs for both great powers, which is where the middle power comes in as a sort of buffer, where the great power is able to exercise its influence by providing infrastructural aid of different varieties to the middle power, and using this as a buffer to act against the depredations of other great powers. At the same time, because of the importance of the middle power in such a relationship, and while the middle power also derives the security provided by a particular great power, it may be targeted by a rival great power in seeking to damage the infrastructural investments of another one. And this, again, may or may not play to the relative advantage of a great power, as it leads to a cyclical relationship of the middle power requiring more security from the great power, and the great power using the middle power as a ground for its own spreading its sphere of influence. And this brings me to the case study of the Great Games. The first one, as the term suggests, was looked at as more of a game compared to a direct confrontation between two great powers, in this case, colonial Britain and Russia. And as they attempted to build central buffer states in the Central Asian Khanates through mainly providing infrastructural support, both in terms of economics and military technology or aid. While since these two powers did not meet directly in battle, they aimed to perpetuate these aims through the various middle powers trying to cultivate allies in these areas. And again, the concept of the middle power as an ally of the great power, as seen through the great game, also allows the great power to claim the middle power as a sort of ally on whose behalf it can mediate against another great power, and in doing so, expand its own sphere of influence. Now, this term new great game has again come up with regard to the dynamic between the People's Republic of China and the United States of America, where especially the Belgian...
I would like to request you to please wind up.
Yes, I will come to it. And with the implications of the BRI in both building economic dependence on the People's Republic of China, as well as its implications for building the string of pearls as military bases. And in this regard, looking at both the US's responses to this purported threat, as well as claims that its international engagements are shrinking, and seeing how Chinese claims of a more inclusive society would feature in looking at great and middle power relationships with regard to the two powers of the time. And I include some of my select references. With this, it brings me to the conclusion of my discussion. I realize that this may be a slightly broad topic, so I welcome any recommendations regarding how I might be able to further recommend this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siddharth. It's interesting, and actually it's very clear from your presentation that you are a history student with a background of history. The great game, you've spent a lot of time on that. Now, what you must understand is that since then, things have changed. Terminology is changing even today. Now, we do not talk about great powers. There are major powers, there are minor powers, there are, of course, emerging powers, all right? So when you talk about middle powers and buffer states, now you were thinking in terms of buffer states as Afghanistan and even, well, Siam, and there are other states like that which were buffer states, and they left it as buffer states primarily because the great powers were playing the great game in different parts, and they wanted a buffer between these, all right, so that they didn't really clash openly. Now, so basically, I mean, those concepts are very much there, and what you can do is uh, shorten the introduction because you spent a lot of time on the great game and about great powers and middle powers and buffer states. Okay, that can be made concise to the theoretical. I mean, bringing forth the theory, all right, as such of great powers and the 19th century well scenario, all right, as such of the great game, and then you come to the new great game, all right, where of course the we do not talk about great powers and middle powers and buffer states. Okay, in fact, well, there's a huge ocean between the US and China. So the question of buffer states, all right, well, it's not the same as such. Okay, you could call basically Ukraine as a buffer state, but even that is not. I mean, the Europeans think of Ukraine as a buffer between them and Russia, all right? And Russia, the problem is if it joins the NATO, then NATO is right on its borders. But in the context of US-China, well, what would you call a buffer state? So basically, a bit of rethinking is required, and you have to develop the concept of the new great game more and pay less attention to the old great game. All right, where in fact it's top heavy that way because you spend more time on the historical aspects. But less on the current aspect. Whether it should be the other way around, whether the great game theory applies to the present scenario of US China. And as I told you, basically this idea of the buffer state, all right, is not there in the US-China context, all right? And so far as middle powers, it's a major power, and it's because it's no longer a superpower, it's a major power, all right? And China is going to be a major power soon, all right? But it's still called emerging, all right? So between them, and as I said, there's an ocean between them, which is the buffer, okay? Uh, they're both seeking influence in the Indo-Pacific, all right? Uh, and that is what you should be discussing a bit more, Siddharth, because, uh, well, it's more, you should be developing the contemporary more than what has happened before. Is that okay with you?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, one of my objectives, I don't think I'd delved in it too deeply, was to actually see how the concept of the middle power, since literature gives it a rather amorphous shape, as to neither here nor there, but defined mainly in terms of the great power, to see how the idea of a middle power could be defined in terms of the 20th century. Because again, a middle power, as literature suggests, again evolves with the scope of the so-called great power, from border territory to an international space regarding the sphere of influence of the great power. So in that sense, I will be focusing on the US-China dynamic in seeing how the new great game has evolved. But I'm also trying to see how the idea of the middle power itself can be both defined and redefined in this context.
Okay, so it's going to be more ideational in the first part, and then you are going to take that as a kind of focus study.
Yes, ma'am. I hope to build a theoretical base and then use it to build the geopolitical context.
Okay, but be careful, as I said, with the terminology, because the terminology has changed quite a bit and is changing all the time, all right? Minor power is something like Vanuatu or something like that, all right, in the ocean. Now, it's no longer the less developed countries, okay? Uh, but basically a small state which is not really important. The less developed countries remain the less developed countries, and these are in Africa to a large extent. So when you are using power or even buffer states, okay? Now, what is a buffer state? It's very clear in the 19th century what was a buffer state, okay? Even in the 20th century, I should say it was quite clear, okay? But today, in fact, the concept of buffer state acting as a buffer between two major powers or a emerging power and a major power, that really doesn't hold good. So theoretically, please develop it. See how much it basically fits it to contemporary situations, how much it does not. All right. Develop a theoretical base and then go on to the China, US, and whether it basically fits into your theoretical conceptualization. It will be interesting, I'm sure. Thank you.
I will, ma'am. Thank you for your recommendation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Siddhartha-ji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Subharno-ji.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're
Am I
audible.
audible? Yes, all right. Let me share the screen quickly. Okay. I have shared my screen. Is it fine? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes, a quick yes. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So I'm going to present, I'm Subharno Chakraborty, and I'm going to present a performance poetry with some visuals. I won't be taking more than 5 minutes. But before I go on with the poetry, I think it's important to set the context first because it will help in understanding the basic undertones of the poetry. Right. First, let me talk about the motivation. Right. Obviously, there is no slide for that. I will be verbally saying that. There are three possible motivations for me. The first thing was, like I read an article in MIT Technology Review. It was on data colonialism, that how the AI giants has been using by doing all sorts of surveillance on countries like Venezuela and like Colombia, and they're trying to get more and more data for their own benefits. That was the first thing. Second thing was, the I would say the AI race between US and China, the ChatGPT versus DeepSeek thing, which we saw a few months back. And the third one was India-France AI Summit, where they started to work towards, like promoting safe, secure, and trustworthy AI systems. Now, the second thing which I will talk about is a question which I'm looking forward towards, that how does India's AI policy compare with that of US and China in terms of governance, ethics, and digital sovereignty? Now, the methodology which I'll be using, that will be thematic document analysis and comparative policy analysis. For the time being, through my basic general readings, I'm trying to focus on 4 basic dimensions. They are strategic vision, ethics, data governance, and international engagement. Now, I'm going to start the poetry thing over here. For the poetry, let me tell you, it's not based on the policy analysis, but the literature and the readings, which I'll be using later for the triangulation. It's based on that. Let me begin. All right. So it's visual too. They say the world is wide now. Data flows like rivers. Machines whisper in code and empires rise, not on land, but on algorithms. 2 giants, the US, the innovator, moves fast. Just a second. Let me, moves fast, breaks things, lets the market write the rule books. AI for power, AI for profit. Here I'm talking about the US. Yeah. Then comes China. The architect builds walls of steel, networks of control, AI for order, AI for the state. Now, the China is more, it's it's a controlled one. I mean, and for now comes the India, and then there's India, not a giant in the usual sense, but something more complex, more human, more chaotic, more possibilities. So sorry, I'm just facing a little issue in changing the slide. Just a second. I just hope. Okay. The skills, the performance, and the poetry too. Yeah, yes. Thank you. Yeah. India doesn't shout, it listens, it learns, it builds, not just for today, but for everyone. Bhashini, Aadhaar, and DPDP Act. These aren't just simple terms, they are philosophies in code, digital infrastructure rooted in public good, not power, not paranoia, only purpose. See, India isn't choosing sides. It's drawing circles, bringing in the margins, voicing the voiceless, coding with compassion. Ethics, yes. Access, yes. Sovereignty, always. It's messy, it's fragmented, it's still finding its shape, but damn, it's real. Now the last one, yeah. This isn't the East, this isn't the West, this is the rest of the world, and India is showing us what AI could be when it doesn't serve the few, but uplifts the many. It's not imitation, it's not isolation, it's innovation with soul. This is the third wave, and it's just getting started towards the ultimate goal. And along with this, I thank you so much. I'm done with the presentation.
Thank you, Shuvarno. That was a very interesting way of basically telling us what you are working on. And the poem should be there in whatever that you write, or write as such. So it should be included. So obviously, you're working on India's AI, digital sovereignty, etc., and geopolitics. Okay, and how it is not, it's following its own path. All right, it has its own sovereignty and it's doing it. And I think you're doing a great job. Good luck. I'm not going to comment because I think it's very innovative the way you put it itself. All right. I don't know exactly what methodology you're going to use. Well, I've got all your conclusions from that, but what are your research questions?
Well, ma'am, the research question for me here is just a comparative policy analysis, that how does India's AI policy compare with that of US and China in terms of governance, ethics, and digital sovereignty? Now,
Right.
earlier I was thinking that if I can include things like how much AI investments trends have done, basically to come up with a causal question. But then I felt that I don't know whether I will be able to create that causal question or not. I'm still thinking about it, honestly. But for the time being, the first step which I would be taking is a simple comparative policy analysis. I've picked up 6 policies, like 2 for India, 2 for China, 2 for US, and trying to, like come up with what are the possible variables and factors and like the commonalities between all of them. And through that, if I can get something, because of then I will be like moving ahead. So for the time being, it's just one question for me, and it's simple. How does India's AI policy compares with that of China and US in different terms?
Okay, do we have an AI policy?
Yeah.
Is
I mean,
it
see, India AI mission. I mean, although
Right.
I don't know whether it's India AI mission is there, DPDPA Act is there, but still, I think in last year December or this year January, there has been some rule by the help of which they're going to implement that. Right. So India AI mission is the only thing which we have in front of us, right?
the mission? Right. Okay, the AI mission.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And digital policy with all cyber security, etc. All that is there. But in fact, none of these countries really have that kind of a policy. When you talk about a policy, of course, it's a framework. All right.
It's a
Which is
framework,
not
yes,
there,
yes,
and
yes.
not US, not China, not India. I mean, because it's too much in the private sector that it's developing. All right. Maybe later on, we can all have a policy, or there can be a UN convention on, well, how much to allow or anything like that. But yes, I think you're going in the right direction. It's good. Uh, the question that you are saying is good, and I think I mean, when you're doing a comparative policy analysis, it's just perfect. So I really don't have it. I look forward to seeing paper when it comes out, because your poem brings out your conclusions, which are well, I thought is a very interesting way of putting it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, I had just had one question. I won't take much time.
Yeah.
Like when we are doing any kind of comparative policy analysis, do we need to have a proper theoretical framework? Based on it, I will be doing all sorts of document analysis. Like there has to be a structure,
Right.
isn't it? Like some
For a
theoretical framework.
thesis, yeah, definitely. I mean, when you do your thesis, all right, when you do a thesis or something like that, you certainly need a theoretical framework. But
Right,
when you're doing
right.
a research paper, all right, comparative analysis may not be based on a theoretical base, all right, as such. You can just do a theory. I mean, just do a comparative analysis, okay,
Right. Done.
based on that. Right? Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Subarnaji. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Avneet Kaurji.
Am I audible to you all? Hello?
You're audible.
Okay. My title is Review on Environment and Climate Change Impact on Geopolitics and Diplomacy Around the World in Recent Years. In recent years, climate change has emerged as a pivotal factor in reshaping geopolitics and diplomacy. We are witnessing extreme climatic events such as flash floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, cyclones, wildfires, etc. In this year itself, we have seen California wildfires that has been spread from forest to residential area, and we have seen loss of millions of dollars property. Even last month in Myanmar, we have witnessed earthquake of 7 Richter scale, and that has spread till Thailand. So nations are increasingly aligning their foreign policies with environment objectives, leading to new alliances. Objective of my paper is to examine environment challenges in state interest and develop diplomatic strategies employed to address these. In this paper, I will be taking two complementary approaches as well by positioning states and interest groups which develop strategies on coping with climate change and understand their problem areas such as physical, economic, demographic, emerging in geographic space as a consequence or linked to climate change. My motivation to work on the topic is come from everyday news related to environment and how climate change is impacted our world order in the form of natural disasters and increase in global temperature. Here, geopolitics and diplomacies play a vital role in voice their leaders' voices in pen and paper. They work with their peers to reach all possible solutions available at the moment. Whether these opinions and matters, wins and loses is a different matter. Methodology I will be using in by reading secondary literature such as case studies, papers available, journals, books, review international treaties, conferences, and other such materials. My expected outcome might be uh, that how diplomats in developing country like ours and world are complementing their approaches, such as positioning their positioning in interest groups and develops strategies coping with climate change. And second one is, as I talked about earlier, problem areas such as economic, demographic, and physical emerging in the geographic space as a consequence or linked to climate change and how they have tackled in the past and whether that can be used in the future. Thank you.
Avneet, thank you very much. But it's good that you're thinking of climate change and environmental diplomacy.
Yes, ma'am.
But it is very broad, what you're talking
Okay.
about, because you're talking about global.
Yes.
It'd be better if you kind of focused on a country, all right,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that country's diplomacy and well, basically how climate change and environmental laws, etc., are being well implemented. Okay, um,
Okay.
maybe you can choose India, where of course it is available, but maybe an island nation would be even better. Like Maldives, all right,
All right.
uh,
All right.
or Maldives is good because they do have a lot of things. Even climate financing, etc. All that is there. Gender financing for climate change. All right, that is basically women are being brought in. So, and this material is available on the internet. You could focus on that. Environmental diplomacy and climate change. A case study of, well, whatever country that you wish to do. Okay.
Sure, ma'am.
Uh,
Sure.
yeah, because you see, Maldives, for instance, all right, there is this fear that some parts of it will be underwater in the
Okay.
future. Okay, so basically, they are taking, taking it very seriously, and there are uh, actions, all right, which
Okay.
are they're trying to do. Okay, so basically, go into first the UN, uh, the SDGs, all right, and
Hmm.
other, all right, environmental things, and see how these are being implemented in one case study, right?
Sure, ma'am. I
Okay.
will do it. I will follow your suggestions and look into it.
Right, because otherwise, what you have talked about is, it's too vast, all right, and it's not focused. So
Okay,
basically,
ma'am.
focus on something, okay? Right?
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Thank you, Avneet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, would you like to add something?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ria, and thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, for your comments. I agree to, I fully concur with Professor Bhattacharya's comments. And while ma'am has just mentioned that, the developing countries, if you identify one of the countries and take that as a case study, when we are talking about diplomacy, climate diplomacy, if we can also incorporate the conundrum that is, the developing conundrum, where the whole
Okay.
idea of common but differentiated responsibilities, the CBDR, figures in very very prominently, and where the developed nations take a back foot. Otherwise, in all the negotiations and everything, they are all there at the forefront. But when the time for real work comes, there is always some obstacle or the other that they present. So, or maybe you could just look at the challenges posed by the US. For example, with Biden administration coming in, again he rejoined the Paris Agreement after Trump's moving out, and when he has left office again, the US has left the Paris Agreement. So, what kind of differences, or the overall challenges that such kind of steps brings in, because of one, they have had the historical responsibilities towards climate change through their 200 years of industrialization, and vis-a-vis the very recent and nascent developmental efforts, incremental rather, for smaller countries, especially for the SIDS, the small island developing states, or even countries like India, who are trying to industrialize and also take care of their emissions and carbon footprints, etc., in the most responsible manner. And how are they actually negotiating at the negotiating table? You could see some of the UNFCCC, the COP summits over the past few years, maybe a comparative assessment. So maybe that will also bring to light the whole diplomacy angle and all the geopolitical angle that you are trying to bring into your learning outcomes. That would be very, very comprehensive, including which what Professor Bhattacharya has just spoken about. She has suggested. So if these can be accommodated, it would be great.
Sure, ma'am. I tried to put up both of your suggestions in my paper and bring out something comprehensive that can come up for the paper.
Yes, certainly, certainly. Please get in touch in case you would need more,
Sure,
suggestions. Feedback. Thank
sure,
you.
ma'am. I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Avneet. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Aditya Saraj.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Understand. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Good evening. So my research essay topic is tourism in India, a diplomatic soft power tool, and its role in sustainable development in India. For India, tourism serves as a platform to reach out to and maintain cordial relations with foreign countries. So promotion of tourism would open up opportunities for India to display its rich and diverse culture, promote cultural exchanges, generate foreign exchange, and promote local economies, to name a few. So my main aim is to explore the role of tourism as a strategic soft power tool in India and evaluate how sustainable tourism practices can enhance the country's global image and diplomatic influence. So firstly, I would like to explain what soft power is. So soft power is the ability to influence others through attraction rather than coercion, through culture, values, and ideas. While it's often associated with Western media and popular culture, India holds immense potential in this space, especially through its rich cultural heritage, traditions, and spiritual depth. From ancient practices like Ayurveda to major religious gatherings like the Kumbh Mela, India offers unique experiences that deeply resonate with international visitors. These experiences create lasting impressions and connections, making tourists informal ambassadors of Indian culture. So, keeping this in mind, I would like to explore in what ways has India used tourism to project its cultural, spiritual, and wellness-based heritage globally. So the Ministry of Tourism has outlined a national strategy for sustainable tourism that focuses on three pillars: environmental, socio-cultural, and economic sustainability. So I'll be looking into what are the key components of India's national strategy for sustainable tourism and how do they support the goals of soft power diplomacy. So tourism aligns with several United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly those related to economic growth, responsible consumption, and life below water. So, keeping this in mind, I would like to look into how effectively does India's tourism policy align with the United Nations SDG goals, particularly Sustainable Development Goal number 8, 12, and 14. So, by investing in infrastructure, ensuring tourist safety, and promoting lesser known destinations, India can further enhance its global image. So, I would like to look into what role does responsible tourism play in strengthening India's soft power narrative on the global stage. So through this research, I aim to develop a deeper understanding of how tourism functions as a tool of soft power, particularly in the Indian context. I hope to shed light on how India's cultural assets, wellness practices, and religious traditions contribute to its international image. So, by analyzing existing tourism policies and their alignment with sustainable development goals, I hope to identify both the strengths and the gaps in India's approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. That was an interesting topic. Uh, uh, and basically, I just have a couple of suggestions regarding this. Number one is uh, why not have a time frame? You know, because you, apart from talking the narrative, basically narrating things, these are there, and what is there, what is sustainable, responsible tourism. We also need to look at figures, how far it has worked out. All right, whether the number of tourists, different types of tourists, medical tourism, there's religious tourism, there's yoga, all that, what is rising, what is falling, whether the entire this thing is rising, or whether there is a fall, and when there was a fall. Of course, COVID years, there was hardly any tourism. Also about the problems and what are we doing about it, like when there's also a question of, there have been complaints by foreigners, all right, regarding sexual violence, also racist violence, all right, depending on which country you're from, all right. So, uh, you know, uh, when you write a paper, there should be the positive as well as the con side, all right, the negative side, all right, so that you can suggest solutions, okay? Uh, so this is a very good concept, definitely a good concept. But my first suggestion is that maybe you work in the on the time frame of the 21st century, or right, 25 years or something like that. Whether there's been an up and down, you can have a graphic thing also, all right, different types of tourism. And secondly, the second point is uh, there are problems, all right, regarding tourism. There have been sexual violence, and there is a fear, all right, sometimes basically uh, among women, even in Goa or someplace like that, in the beach, if a tourist is assaulted, that becomes a big this thing. African, all right, tourists who come here to study, or in fact, for medical tourism, they do face racist, all right, issues, all right. How can we overcome that, all right? So, maybe that will make it a more comprehensive paper. Aditya, are you okay with that?
Yes, ma'am, definitely. Thank you so much. I will take this into account. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Aditya. And Ria, how many more do we have?
Ma'am, we only have few presentations left. I guess 5 to 6 presentations are left. And next we have Shambhavi Sharma. Shambhavi ji, are you here with us? You can go ahead and present your presentation now.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you're perfectly audible, Shambhavi ji.
Okay, thank you, Ria. So I will be keeping it very short and concise because we're already short on time. My topic for this research essay is geopolitics and trade. And I have chosen India and China as my main focus because as an Indian national, China happens to be our largest goods trading partner and also the manufacturing super hub of the world. And I will be using empirical data here. Oh, just a second. empirical data from the Ministry of Commerce and Industries website. And I have chosen to create interlinkages between certain border conflicts and their effect on imports from China, as well as certain public policy measures by the Indian government and the Chinese government. I have not included those here because I had to keep it short, as well as certain diplomatic maneuvers by Prime Minister Modi and Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. And I will be basically determining how certain factors such as these, because I've seen multiple research papers that have analyzed China and India trade, as well as many papers that talk about geopolitics and border conflicts, as well as other issues that I mentioned. But none of them actually are working on an actual numerical formula, or maybe a sort of prediction for Indian businesses and entrepreneurs to go by when there are these conflicts happening in the geopolitical sphere. So this would be my focus for this paper. Here I have started with the Depsang Valley. I am not choosing conflicts of the 20th century because India only opened its borders in 1991, and India became a competitive market on a global scale in 1991. So these are some very recent conflicts that I know for a fact that my peers and people studying IR and geopolitics today would be aware of. I have added a map here to understand the situation better. Here, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I have compared the two time periods from when the conflict began. This was an April conflict. So we can clearly see here that January to April, India's Chinese imports fell from this certain number to 154,000 USD. And while this may not be a drop that is very significant for China, but to me, it helps me understand the Indian consumers' behavior and how volatile public opinion is in case of geopolitical conflicts and how it affects consumer behavior in this particular instance. In this other instance that I chose of September 2014, this is actually an exception, and I genuinely enjoyed researching about this in detail, irrespective of the conflict here, because President Xi Jinping, the Chinese premier, he visited India after 60 years. This was almost a big historic visit by him, and he was personally escorted by Prime Minister Modi everywhere. There were talks of trade and other such agreements. They were all I think mentioned in the news, but there is not exact information about how they affected imports as such. But here, even though there was a conflict going on the LAC, and the president was in India, we could see that it actually led to an increase in imports. This could be related to public diplomacy. I will not be speculating a lot about that, but there is a lot of nuance here. Ma'am, I'm planning to maybe include a graph in my research paper if I'm allowed to there. And that would be showing this particular exception in detail. After this, I chose a 2015 conflict again along LAC. Here also, as expected, there was a decline in imports because as soon as news hits social media, everybody's on social media these days. There is a strong call for Make in India, vocal for local, etc. And we see that while public opinion can be manipulated by social media and news articles, but we also have to understand that these national moves affect the average consumer more than we have studied in detail. So again, as expected, there was a drop in imports. I have chosen this very immediate period of 4 months in each case, because if I choose an entire financial year, then the trade of India and China has always been steadily increasing. So that would sort of nullify the topic of my research. I have chosen small time periods, 4 months before the conflict began and 4 months after the conflict, and how it is affected in monetary terms, absolute monetary terms here. The next conflict is of Doklam. This was covered by almost all news channels worldwide. US tried to intervene in this context. And here also, as expected, there was again a fall in Chinese imports. Indian consumers preferred brands that were from India, and Indian businesses marketed themselves as pro-India and Make in India businesses. So I have included a map here again, so as to understand the significance of this particular region and why it became such a big issue. And even today, the chicken's neck is a conflicted region. Bhutan, that has absolute sovereignty over this place, needs India's help to sort of keep China away from this region, even till date. Then lastly, I have chosen Galwan Valley in May 2020. In this case, as the pandemic was already going on and Indian businesses were struggling, there was a preference, strong preference actually, for Indian goods. And as always, every time when there's a conflict,
Please
and
wind
it, okay, sure. Yeah, this is the last slide. Yes, again, as expected, there is a decline of 23,000 USD here. I'm not going to read the text because it's a lot. And so to wind it up, I would basically say that the reason for my research paper is that as I've completed my master's in development studies, I've realized that most development revolves around money. And money, trade, imports, and exports are something that are not just I would say a result of economic policy or say ease of business in a particular country, but also how a consumer behaves. So this is an intersection of economics, a little bit of business studies, and geopolitics. My sources have been mainly the Ministry of Commerce and Industries website, because I'm focusing on empirical data and I don't want it to, I didn't want any discrepancies. I also went to OECD's website, and there's this one particular journal that I followed for the exact time period of conflicts. And there are others as well, but I have not included them in this PPT because then it would be really long. So yes, that's about it from my side. And I'm open to suggestions and comments.
Thank you, Shambhavi. That was very interesting, and especially if you do an empirical analysis of these four incidents and its impact, geopolitics, the impact of geopolitics on geoeconomics. Now, this is one suggestion which would probably make it more interesting because it has bounced back. All right, trade. There's just one incident where you said that it really did not decrease, but the others there was a decrease, but then it bounced back again. All right. So how long did it take every time? All right, for trade to bounce back and increase even more. All right. Uh, so maybe if you can look at those figures also and bring them in. I mean, you can certainly use graphs, I'm sure. All right. So that will be interesting for us to know that, well, it has a temporary impact, right, geopolitical incidents on economics, on geoeconomics, but it's temporary, right? So, can you
Yes,
do that?
ma'am, exactly.
Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. That was exactly my point. That I've just chosen 4 months before the conflict and 4 months after, because, like you said, temporary conflicts plus public opinion is very easy to sway. So,
Absolutely.
if we take a longer time period, then we would not see any major difference.
Right. So maybe if you could give those figures also, this will make it even more interesting. Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. I will include those.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Simi ma'am, would you like to add something?
No, I'll pass.
Sure. So we'll move, thank you, Sambhaviji, and we'll move to the next presentation by J. Jude Amlaji.
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Good evening.
Your voice is breaking.
I would like to start my presentation by stating a code. It is the application.
Your voice is breaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. It's better now.
So I would like to start my presentation by stating a quote. That is, it is the obligation. It is the obligation of every person born in a safer room to open the door when someone in danger knocks. So my research topic is: does India have a refugee policy? A study of the legal aspects of India's treatment of select groups of refugees. So I chose this topic because during calamities and during this period, there are a lot of people who are not feeling safe in their own mother country, and they are planning to shift to another country. They are able to legally move to another country or a new country, but those who are underprivileged and those who are mostly are not able to move across these. So they decide to illegally migrate by crossing borders. These are my research questions. As a law student, I have only focused on the legal aspects of it. So my first question is relevance of Article 51C of CY. Basically, Article 51C talks about India should follow international law and treaty when dealing with organized people, which India is not doing because it is not compelling with UNHCR's thing where they say that every person, every organized people should have been given the right to live in a particular place in a peaceful life. And relevance of Article 21 of COI, which talks about the right for life in India for any person who's in this land. Interpretation of Section 51C of Citizenship Amendment Act, which talks about granting citizenship, which talks about basically granting citizenship to a person born in India or to a foreigner. And implementation of Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, which talks about granting citizenship to illegal migrants, but it does not tell anything about granting citizenship to Muslims and Sri Lankan Tamils. So methodology is I've referred to books, and as my primary data, I've used the international organizations report, and I have conducted and not I have not conducted, but I have reviewed case studies, which I will be which I will be writing in detail in my research paper. And the importance of my research is basically it talks about the challenges that people who are migrating to India face, illegally migrating to India face, and their cities, and they are not able to get, and they are not being granted studying, and not proper health issues, conditions they are having. So that is the importance of this research. And my preliminary findings is that India, even though India has to follow UNHCR's report, it is not following UNHCR report by not allowing all the refugees to have a home in India. And I would also say that its lack of refugee laws or particular refugee laws in India is lacking. And thank you. And if there's any feedback.
Thank you, Jude. You are a law student, so you should be quite aware that India has not signed the Refugee Convention or its protocol or any of these. So it is not bound to follow. There's the difference between international law and national law. Now, international law is the incorporated international law to make it this thing, but we have not signed the convention at all. So it's not there. So India does not have a refugee policy, which makes it free actually to uh, open its doors or close its doors when it's necessary. So politics is very much involved. When you look at basically the one, the Tibetan refugees, all right, how they were given refuge. When you look at 1971, the rush from Bangladesh, all right, there was very much politics involved. The borders were open; they were allowed to enter. But when it comes to basically Rohingyas, all right, we have an issue with the Rohingyas, all right, and they come in as illegal migrants. They're also, I mean, uh, from Bangladesh, they're trickling in illegal migrants and all that, and they're treated under the Foreigners Act, all right, which is uh, well, basically a Methuselah act, one can say. I mean, it goes way, way back. All right. They should amend that. All right. Now, the reason you're saying that one should, yes, one should. India has been very, very. It did not take the help of UNHCR primarily because it has not signed the convention. So it does allow the UNHCR. There is a UNHCR office, all right, very much in Delhi, and they are allowed to look after certain international, like the Somalis. When they came in, Afghan refugees were under the UNHCR. They were given money. They were given, some Burmese refugees, all right, when they tried to, but the UNHCR was not really helping them as much as they were helping the Somali refugees and basically those from Afghanistan. So basically, it's a very complicated situation. Uh, so uh, 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 you're going to look at it from a legal point of view, all right? So India does not have, there is no regional convention, there is no law except the Foreigners Act, all right, as such. So we do not have any distinct policy on. You're asking, does India have a refugee policy? It does not have a refugee policy. Now, everyone knows it does not have a refugee policy. But what are the consequences of that? So you can basically select. One group of refugees were welcomed, say for instance the Tibetan refugees, and currently the Rohingyas, all right? Or you can take basically the Rohingyas and the Tamil refugees and how basically India's non-policy, all right, towards refugees. It admits who it wants to, it does not admit who it does not want to. So basically, take a relook. I mean, it's not as simple as you're trying to make it. We do not have a policy. We have not signed conventions, and we would like the government would like it to remain that way, primarily because it gives them freedom of action to act when it wants to. Okay, so you can write a critique on that, or you can basically discuss why it does not have a policy, or you can do a case study on such. Maybe two, a comparative case study. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Are you
I will.
okay with that, Jude? Because the way you have done it, I mean, it doesn't really work out. I mean, there's nothing new in what you say. All right. So try and look at it from a, a different perspective. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. I will
Okay.
look into it.
Rethink it again. Right. Right.
Thank you.
Simeon, would you like to add something?
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Bhattacharya, for your comments, and I fully agree with your suggestions. Actually, when I heard the presentation, actually, we don't, we are a nation of 1.4 billion and more people. So, the moral obligation that you set the context in the first slide based on which your entire presentation is, I think that has to be rethought, because running a country and running a society is different, like the whole concept of the demographic dividend, all those, and the whole idea of national security. India will first act for its own people, and then it is, that moral responsibility it owes to its own citizens first. And given the fact that in a rapidly changing world scenario there are multiple conflicts, and the very unstable kind of, in the east we are faced with problems, in our western neighbors we are faced with problems. And then there is the whole China factor. So India is itself in that kind of uh, challenging situation, if you say so, and it is seeking a way forward in terms of economic growth, etc. Amidst this. So putting this kind of, I feel that this kind of an external moral obligation, as your legal aspects are definitely okay. Ma'am has mentioned we do not have a refugee policy, but not to disregard the fact that we have already been welcoming people. So this is more, perhaps this is coming out more as a critique paper rather than a research paper from the legal angle. And what could be the way forward from your point of view, from your legal perspective, that would perhaps offer better insights. And because I don't know what your database would be. It would be more of newspaper media reporting, etc. um, I feel so writing a critique would be a better idea if you want to base your topic on this theme, around this theme.
Okay, ma'am, I will do the changes. And
Yeah, thank you.
thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Jyoti. We'll now proceed with the next presentation by Soumya Krishnaji.
Hello, good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, just give me a second to start.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. So today I'll be talking about analyzing the alternative avenues of Indian diplomacy for the coming future. So, basically, the objective of this research is to identify the emerging and alternative methods of diplomacy in a multipolar and interconnected world. I have looked at several arenas where the current diplomatic system of India and the foreign policy, as well as the public policy, is a little less focused, but the areas in itself are and have been performing really well in order to connect people to people, in order to foster people to people connections, and in order to create a better narrative for the country in general. So the focus areas of my paper basically include digital and energy diplomacy. So what I've done is I've done some case studies, and on the basis of those case studies, I've formulated the arguments on all the focus areas. So when we come towards environmental / spiritual diplomacy, so with that, the argument and the basic message which I wanted to portray with the second point basically involves around the Indian traditional systems, which treat environment in a spiritual way, and how those historical perspectives and how those historical values which we as Indians have in ourselves can be fostered into a better environmental policy on a global level. Up next, we have sports diplomacy. So in that, what I've tried to cover is the diasporic perspectives into sports, the planning perspectives of the sport, and also how sports in general has been connecting people to people from across the world, and how the Indian scenario at the moment is lagging behind the world when we compare it to our neighbors such as China, or you consider Japan or South Korea, or even the US. Up next, I have covered cinema and food diplomacy. So again, this goes back. All of the focus areas have a strong historical perspective attached to them. And when we consider food, basically, I've taken the studies from all across the world, like how food connects people, and how Indian food in general has been such a platform for the nation's identity globally, and also how it is such an underrated subject. We take the spices, we take the elements of our food so casually, but on a global scale, they frame Indian identities and they frame narratives, and it needs the attention that it deserves. Lastly, it's fashion and cultural diplomacy. So in today's world, Indian fashion and Indian fashion designers, as well as the culture of India, it is framing identities globally. It is getting the recognition it deserves. But again, the policy making towards it is still a little bit lagging as we compare it to the other powerhouses around the globe. So basically, the goal of the study is to strengthen people to people connections and propose sustainable diplomatic futures. And the motivation is about rethinking diplomacy beyond hard power and basically centering it around people and the values that we as Indians have in our ethos and in our values and our systems. The basic challenges in the study involved the limited data and the recognition that these areas that I have discussed have in the mainstream media, as well as in the mainstream narratives which are formed around India and its identity on a global level. The key research questions involve what are the India's alternative diplomatic avenues, and how can we build a stronger diplomatic identity and narrative with the use of these focus areas. Like, I'll be testing out the basic strength and the basic potential of these areas. Like, do they really have that potential, or is it just one of the mediocre avenues for getting a narrative? So, for methodology, I have reviewed the current initiatives and emerging diplomatic domains, expert opinions, and I've compared the international case studies, as I previously spoke, in case of sports, in case of fashion, and also in the case of other cultural avenues. For sources, press reports, UN publications, WF datasets, and academic literature is the basic items which I've consulted. And the expected outcomes of the study basically involve the recognition of non-conventional diplomacy's potential, insights for inclusive and sustainable foreign policy, academic and policy-driven push for soft power emphasis, and a blueprint for strong people-centered diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Samya. Interesting. Well, you're talking actually about soft power and diplomacy and India's soft power in the present context. There's just one question that basically is difficult to measure the impact of soft power. How do you plan to do that?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, in order to measure impact, I think we need to look at the narratives which are around. Like, that's how I see it. Like, for instance, recently, I guess in 2022, there was a fashion show which was organized by the Indonesian embassy on the on the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, and basically it focused on the collaborative efforts and the common prints. Like, it's a batik print, so it has elements of India as well as Indonesia. So it had a wider the impact went beyond the foundation of just fashion. It was beyond that. It was basically culminating two cultures. So I think that's how I measure it. The impact of it, like how big is, how many boundaries is a certain event or a certain diplomatic avenue breaking up. It's not monetary. It cannot be measured. That's what I would agree on. But the boundaries that it breaks and the connection makes, I think that way of measuring the impact.
Okay, because the other way around, like India is impacted by say, Western fashions. The Western companies, Guess, Gap, etc. We are Adidas. All this, all right, has a huge Indian market. Now, does Indian fashion, all right, or companies basically have the same kind of impact in other countries? I mean, this is one way you can measure, not just a fashion show or anything like that, but basically, what is the impact in terms of, well, our companies? What kind of reach do they have? All right. Uh, so that is very important. Of course, when it comes to spiritual, World Yoga Day, that of course is an impact. I mean, everybody is doing yoga. Yoga is something that everybody knows about. Uh, so that is there. Now, Indian food, of course, and in any place all over the world you go, you do find Indian restaurants. Okay, but how do you measure that? For instance, one sees McDonald's and Kentucky's Fried Chicken all over the world. Now, one can also measure the number of outlets these have in countries. So far as Indian food outlets are concerned, these are more, I mean, we don't really have that kind of a brand kind of name or anything like that, but we do have restaurants, all right? So the issue is, the problem is actually quantity, well, giving a kind of quantity, all right, or giving a quantity analysis, all right, as to what impact these have. Uh, you can do a conceptual paper, of course, with a bit of quantitative analysis, all right. where it counts, like yoga or something like that, the World Yoga Day, and you can measure. I mean, how many people turned out for World Yoga Day, all right, as such, what exercises they did, all right, which were there all over the world. Now, and basically the yoga centers, you can try and find out in the United States, all right, how many do they have, all right, where they teach yoga. But uh, you need something more concrete, all right, to base, all right, your alternate. First of all, rather than alternate diplomacy, has always been there. This is soft power diplomacy, all right, India's soft power and its impact on diplomacy, all right, as such. So uh, basically, try and do that. Try and take a look, all
Sure,
right.
ma'am. Sure,
Yeah,
ma'am.
like for instance, Sabyasachi. Sabyasachi, it's a brand name, all right. But how many people abroad know of Sabyasachi, all right?
Ma'am,
Cinema.
if I may speak. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, ma'am. Basically, what I meant by that was, so recently, so basically, historically, Indian food and Indian spices have been around the world. So if we consider dishes like idli, sambar, and other dishes, so ma'am, they have a lot of historical background, which basically is related with how people connected with each other in the past. And exactly same kind of thing goes for some prints also, which are traditional Indian prints, like I was talking about the batik print. So my point regarding that whole narrative is that by using the past, like in the past there were things which India offered to the world, and now in order to build a better narrative for our soft power, we need to use these arenas, like those historical contexts. They need to be used in a better framework. And right now, uh, it's very less represented in media also, and also in narrative building also. There are like many things, like many food items are there, like Greek and Indian cuisine, they share together. Southeast Asian cuisine and Indian cuisine, they share together. So
In
my
fact, when you're
yes,
talking
ma'am.
about ancient, we had a much stronger soft diplomacy all over Southeast Asia, where, in fact, from the south, basically they conquered, they went. All right, you have the Mahabharata, you have, even the kind of uh, dress is a kind of modified, the names, all right. Uh, if you look at Angkor Wat is Mott, all right, as such. So
Yes,
basically,
ma'am.
it's a kind of change over there, all right. So, uh, uh, well, it had a much deeper impact, all right. And then, of course, Buddhism. If you visit Cambodia or you visit any of these other countries nearby, I mean, you see the impact, all right. Indonesia, of India's soft power, way back in ancient India, all right. Today, in fact, is not there. So that is what I'm saying. And it is there. It's not there. I mean, the very fact that yoga has been recognized, I mean, there's a World Yoga Day, that is also India's soft power, all right. It's very important. Yoga as an exercise, okay, for health reasons, it is recognized, and so that is important. So find out which are the points, all right. You're saying fashion and all that. It's all very important. But I mean, the West has impacted the rest of the world much more than we can ever hope to. I mean, you don't see Western women wearing saris, or sometimes, in fact, their fashion includes a pallu or something like that, added on to a long dress. But that's about it. All right. Or for that matter, the Japanese are wearing Western clothes, and they've given up the kimono. And here, increasingly, we are seeing. Well, women are wearing salwar kameezes and all that, but you have what? Western pants along with the kameez. So shortly it's going to change, and more Indian women are wearing dresses. So it's more the other way around. And basically, you can analyze that also. Uh, you don't find Indian brands which are popular here, I mean, abroad, but you do find things like yoga, as you said, the Indian spiritual part, all right, as such. All that is very much there. Okay, so rethink. Don't
Yes,
have.
ma'am. Surely, ma'am.
Okay,
Surely,
okay,
surely.
okay.
Simi ma'am, would you like to add something?
Yeah, apart from everything else that Madam has just mentioned, perhaps cinema could also be one of the parameters of your assessment. And, the whole box office collections and the the craze for Indian cinema outside the country may be also helpful in your quantitative analysis.
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am,
Thank
like
you.
for example, ma'am, Dangal, it created a
Yes.
huge impact in China,
Right,
and
right.
Bollywood films they have that value, they have that weightage to them. They
Correct.
connect diaspora also, and they go cross country and
Yes.
cross culture. So of course,
Yes.
that's a consideration. Sure,
Oh,
ma'am.
thank you.
Before we proceed further, Sanjukta ma'am, Simi ma'am, we have 5 more presentations to go ahead. Should we do them today or should we do them next week?
I personally feel that maybe we should do them next week. I have some other work. So is it possible, Simi?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Certainly. Certainly.
Okay. I mean, it's already, I think 9:30. It's going to be 9:30. So I have some other work actually. I mean, there are people coming over, so I need to get out of this. So I'll be very happy. I'll join you next week on Thursday if there are only 5 presentations.
Yeah, that would be better.
Okay. Right.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. In that case, Ria, I think we can go ahead with the formal vote of thanks.
Sure, ma'am. This brings us to the day 8 of this immersive program, and I would like to go ahead with the final vote of thanks. As we come to the end of the eighth day of Diplomacy, Foreign Policy, and Geopolitics Youth Fellowship, online international winter and spring school program, and a 3-month immersive online introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program, I, Ria Rawat, researcher at Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for day 8, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji and Dr. Simi Mehta ji, for generously giving their time and for reviewing all the presentations in such great detail, and our conveners and enthusiastic participants for the active engagement. Readings for the session have been shared to you in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. We eagerly await your presence in the valedictory session scheduled for April 24 at 6 p.m. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wish you a very good evening. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good night.